a week of debate in the
Yes,
Parliament
yes,
of
yes.
St. Lucia.
Yeah.
I'm expected to be joined by the Prime Minister very soon. So tonight, in fact, my intention, Champagne, was to complete my budget speech tonight, but I'll postpone that for
Really?
another time.
Okay.
Because I only got to page 6 out of 14 pages.
Out of 14.
Out of 1-4. 6
Okay.
out of
Yes,
14.
out of 14.
Yes.
Yeah, you have another 8.
In terms of the presentation that I had to make in the Parliament. So tonight I want people to take a little time and think things over. I have to join with you in congratulating all of our students
Yes.
who have made it back to school today. In fact, yesterday inside Castries Southeast, we had 3 events, 2 that I was responsible for and 1 that I was invited to attend.
Yeah.
One of the events was held on the multipurpose court in the Badi Chaussee area. We had a back-to-school arrangement where for the girls, they had their hair combed special
Oh, yes,
styles.
I remember you said that something like that was going to
And
happen.
then we had 2 barbers that gave haircuts to a lot of the young boys
Yes.
in the area. That was just a very small gesture on the part of the Castries Southeast youth group.
Yeah.
The youth group, they were the main organizers of this event, and it started from morning and went late in the afternoon.
Wow.
I am very happy for all the
Yes,
barbers.
we need to ring the bell for them on that, definitely.
The 2 barbers, the various hairstylists that came in and gave of their time free of charge. We also had a second activity similar in the cul-de-sac community where the arrangement was also made, not by the youth group this time, but by a couple residents of the community, and I sponsored some of the events there. Later on in the afternoon, well, I am now realizing we had much more events than that. We had a cleanup campaign in the area of the in Deba. In the Badney area, there's an old community center there and a small playing field. We had a general cleanup with about 17 or 20 persons within the community. And also in the afternoon from about 4 p.m., I had to attend a special concert that was put on by Miss Shirley and Cyril Myers. It was a virtual concert which included singers from Jamaica, from St. Vincent, and the program was geared towards a fundraising drive for St. Vincent, put on by a special team from Canada. They also gave, or they would be donating 200 tablets to St. Lucia. That is through the ministry of Shirley and Cyril Myers, who's one of our renowned gospel artists in St. Lucia.
Right.
And it's the Mission of Hope from Canada that she partnered with. And I had the opportunity to attend the virtual concert along with the various singing groups from St. Lucia. They were performing from the Labey SDA Church, and I must tell you, it was really some nice gospel music. And that is why I am so eager to get this. When I hear about Dennery segment and I hear about all of the other places that have they are noted for the music, if we go to Viewfort North and we know the folk songs there in this area, Castries Southeast, especially the Labey Church, is well known for gospel singing.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have some, when you listen to people like Lloyd Alexander, you look at Trinity Sisters, I think I featured
Yes,
them
one time we played some songs
some time ago, Shirley and Cyril Myers, and so many other special gospel artists. And that is why we are building a state-of-the-art studio down in Wavin Poisson with a stage and using the court as a platform or as the gathering area.
You know, I'm starting to think that Castries Service has more churches than Castries itself, you know.
Yes.
There's a lot of churches in Castries Southeast.
We have well over 20 churches in
that is more than Castries, I know that for sure.
In Castries Southeast, I
call it... And different churches, they're different denominations.
Different denominations, but many church buildings.
Yes,
we have quite a few church buildings spread throughout the length and breadth of the constituency. So I'm really looking forward to the completion of that recording studio. And when I heard the quality of gospel singing that we have, and we have the live musicians playing to back up, some of them play with tracks, but a lot of them have the actual musicians right there playing the music for them. And that is why in that recording studio we are going to have a band room, with all of the musical instruments. So if you want to put in a live concert in that area, you would have no difficulty in being able to do so. So these are some of the things that we are looking at. I must say that I am quite pleased. I just came from the Badney community. We ended cabinet a bit early today because we had cabinet virtual. It was virtual cabinet. We were not in the cabinet room itself. So I had the opportunity to visit a few areas in the
someone called
constituency.
into Dr. Secretary's program and said that you had just left Badney.
Yes, so I visited a few footpaths. Hopefully by next week we'll be able to display some of these pictures. There were a couple areas where the people needed roads. We've had the equipment cutting the roads in these areas. Because, as I've said in the past, Champagne, people generally come and they expect that is big projects that really matter to people. I can tell you, you see the little projects I've done in Castries Southeast. This evening I went to visit an elderly lady where we just did a footpath there, and she's so happy about the fact that, look here, and we do these footpaths as much as possible so that you can roll a wheelchair, somebody with a bicycle, even those who have their little chappies and the motorcycles can get to the place that they are going. So we try to reduce the number of steps that you actually have and have it as a path that you can at least push a wheelchair on it. Or if you need the ambulance to come close by and it cannot get there, that you can roll a stretcher or something. So we've adopted some ways of doing things in Castries Southeast that we believe is very beneficial to the people. We have started, we continue our housing repair program within the constituency, and we've been reaching out to a number of families who need assistance to be able to give them assistance. So I know the other areas in the constituency. I was in the Sarot community yesterday. I visited, I was in Badney, I was in Deba, I was in the Odsa area.
So Mr. Minister, sorry, let me ask you one thing here. Is there an area or community in your constituency throughout your entire 15 years of representation that you have not touched, just once that you have not been to? Is there one, it could be as small as it is?
No, I don't think there's anywhere that I've not been to.
My goodness, we have to ring the bell on that.
There may be houses that I have not gone to, but generally the communities itself, throughout the length and breadth of the constituency, I have been to every community.
That is amazing.
Inside Castries Southeast. And the way my representation is different from a lot of other persons and a lot of places. So that is important for people to understand. All right, we have the PM joining us.
We have two overripe mangoes in the studio, so so we have our Prime Minister just walked in, looking as brighter than I thought I was overripe, but I'm not overripe. Help him out with the microphone. It's kind of the headphone. We have a robotic kind of headphone here, boy. Everybody gets difficulties with those headphones. You have to get used to these headphones.
Yes, so I was saying...
Let me say good night to him before he... Mr. Prime Minister, a special good evening to you, sir.
Champagne, how are you, my brother?
I'm doing good. You look very bright, as always.
Well, you know, I have the Lord, first of all, to thank for that.
That is right.
And then, secondly, my wife.
Right.
And thirdly, you know, totally motivated by what's going on in St. Lucia.
Oh, yes. Well, that is great. I need to ring the bell on that. I must ring the bell on that. Okay, Mr. Minister, we have introduced the Prime Minister,
yes,
so we were somewhere. And I ask you if there's one community that you have not touched in your 15 years, and you said no, you have visited everywhere.
I've visited everywhere. And you know, communities are divided into sub-communities. So when you talk about Badni, you have Deba, you have Aleba, you have Ababa, you have Badi Shosi, you have Tilafe, you have Tileon, you have Chopin. I mean, the amount of places that we've been, that it's in my constituency. I have over 30 major communities. And these communities are divided into
other little areas,
smaller pockets.
Yes.
Because people have their own location and they call it,
their own
have different names.
Different names, that's right.
And the good thing about it, Champagne, for me, what I have found out over the last few weeks is that this time around, I am going to get much more support from people who used to support the Labour Party.
I believe that.
And I'm not saying this out of to make the Labour Party look bad or anything. I go throughout the community, and key supporters of the Labour Party have come in and said to me, look here, this time around we are going to support you. And they didn't say they're going to support me because they want a favor or they want a benefit. They are just happy with the work that we have done in the constituency. Yes. And I think with the PM here tonight, it is to put the economy in perspective. And like I said, I mean, it was... When I listen to the performance, and I want to make a prediction on your program tonight, the first Labour Party seat we are going to win this time around is Castries South.
Okay. You and I are on the same path, my friend.
I am telling you, as a boundary constituency, the number of people who have come to me and said that, look here, this time, Castries South is coming home.
That is for sure.
To the United Workers Party.
Sure.
And from all indications, there are surprises in politics. The surprise would be if we don't win that seat.
I believe
the
that.
surprise is not if we win it. The surprise is if we don't win
I agree.
it. And I said it on your program. And I said it in, I'm not sure if it's on your program. I said it in Parliament. I believe, I am 100% convinced that 5 of the Labour Party seats are in contention to be won by the United Workers Party. Yes. But from what I see, 3 of them,
it's for sure.
I would say, is 80% leaning towards the United Workers Party. So now, everybody have their predictions about politics. Everybody have their own point of view. But anybody who pays attention to what is happening, and that is what PM and I would be dealing with tonight, the reality of where St. Lucia's economy is, what we inherited. I mean, I have to apologize for my people who always look forward to my presentation. But I have to big up the people of Castries Southeast. They said to me, every time you go to Parliament, You deal with the national issues. We want you to dedicate some time to us, the people who sit with that you are in parliament. And so that is why I devoted almost my entire hour to dealing or reporting on the accomplishments of my ministry and the projects in my constituency. So if you analyze my presentation, what you would have seen, I highlighted my constituency and what I've done.
Yeah.
I highlighted my ministry. And my ministry is broad in terms of housing, transport. I didn't even get to touch civil aviation, telecommunications. I have about 5 or 6 communities that will get free Wi-Fi, and that is being rolled out. I didn't even get to touching that in my presentation. Now, what I want people to understand is here we came in as a government, and with all the challenges, the DVRP project, where there was over $70 million approved when the Labour Party was in office, could not execute the projects. You see, by the end of this month, we would have committed every dollar that was available for us to utilize for project implementation throughout the length and breadth of St. Lucia. And that includes projects in opposition constituencies, in government constituencies, you name it. Most of the projects they had identified prior to our time. Now here's what they did. They selected a lot of constituencies that was their constituencies. It so happened that these constituencies now are under the United Workers' Party. So it would look like we are the ones who have selected and chosen these communities to execute the projects. They will never come and tell the people of St. Lucia. They represented Babono, Grozile, Choiseul, Soufrière, Ancillary Canneries. All these were seats held by the St. Lucia Labour Party, and they had aligned projects in these constituencies. And today the United Workers' Party is in office. We are implementing some of the projects. We have improved on the projects. We've changed a few of them, but within the same communities as they had selected previously.
Now, this is where I want to go. And Mr. Prime Minister, I know you will be speaking to St. Lucia about the economy and everything else, but here's where I want to go. And I watch all of the House sitting. The Labour Party, the opposition members never said to St. Lucia what their vision was. In case, God forbid, in case they would win the next election, the upcoming election. So that was one. The projects that they did, if they did any, from 2011 up until 2016, they had an opportunity to highlight these programs, to show to St. Lucia, okay, here's what we did from 2011 up until 2016. Not even that they did. Now, I don't want to take too much of the time. I know you have a packed form of information for St. Lucia, so I will allow you to go with what we have to discuss.
Okay, so I will address 2 points and then engage the PM in the discussion that we are having. One of the things that the Labour Party said was that we kill the banana industry. Now, there's nothing further from the truth. And I know today in listening to the Minister of Agriculture that we were having a discussion, and he was explaining the level of support that this government has given to the banana sector and what the government will be doing for the farmers in this country. Everybody in St. Lucia knows. And Champagne, I'm not those who come and talk out of convenience. I was a banana farmer. I used to sell 150 boxes of bananas a fortnight. It was, my brother was a farmer. He used to sell about the same amount. So my background as a farmer and from my family, I know what the banana industry was. I know when we lost preferential treatment on the market. And I know all the warnings that the late Sir John gave to the banana industry in terms of resetting our priorities and our approach once we would have lost preferential treatment. The Labour Party, in their quest to be elected, and I want St. Lucians who can remember what happened from 1995 in the banana industry, the burning of banana sheds, the chopping down of farmers' plantations, all kinds of things. The banana strikes that was led right down Labrie Street, led by the St. Lucia Labour Party. And Mr. Rupert Gajada was a candidate of the Labour Party. He was chairman or head of SLBGA at the time. So we know the history is there. And when Sir John came back, he came and he supported Sir John because he realized that the Labour Party had used them to help destroy a vital link to St. Lucia's economy, which was the banana industry. And he and Pat Joseph was on a program with Jugwa. And they were explaining, and one of them said on the program, they can say categorically that it was the Labour Party who destroyed the banana industry in St. Lucia. Today, the Labour Party wants to turn around and say, because we've not been able to get bananas to France, that we are the ones who destroyed the banana industry. They paid the debt of $45 million from the taxpayers. They paid the debt of SLBGA, and then they made it into a private company. When you talk about privatization in St. Lucia, how could you privatize the most vital link to your economy? And then the banana industry, you had a number of companies competing with each other, trying to get this, trying to get... Competition is good, but not for an industry like this where you have divided resources. So think of it this way. Where you should have one manager for the banana industry. You had 4 companies, each paying a manager, each paying an office, each paying a secretary. Where does that money come from? So the banana industry was impacted very negatively. And you know the worst part of this? Even after they paid the debt of the SLBGA, they were still taking the deductions from the farmers when they sold the bananas for the debt. And you have to ask yourself, where did that money go? If the debt was paid already. Secondly, I want to touch on, I heard a member talk about the nurses at OKEU Hospital and that what we are doing to the nurses.
Yes, I heard that.
So, I want to read a quote for you on page 22 of Hansard, House of Assembly, Tuesday, December 16, 2014. And that is my contribution to the debate on the bill. Now that's 2014. Who was in office in 2014?
The SLP.
So it says, Mr. Speaker, I move on, page 12. On page 12, it speaks about the various functions of the board, what the board shall do and what it shall not do. And I make particular reference to H, employ, discipline, terminate staff as required. So that is a piece of legislation that Dr. Kenny Anthony, as Prime Minister in 2014, brought to Parliament for Millennium Heights. The establishment that was put in place to operate the OKEU hospital. And here's what I continue to say. Now, I was hoping that I would hear some explanations in relation to the transition from the present structure of government employees through the public service and how this transition will be facilitated in the new structure. Mr. Speaker, I will come to that because the section that speaks to it is still a bit confusing to me, because it speaks about secondment of other persons, but I will come to that when I get there. I am just raising the concern based on the responsibility of the board. And I want to know whether these persons being spoken about here are persons who are presently permanent employees of the government of St. Lucia through the various sectors of the public service. Are we going to terminate the employment of these persons and get them attached to the new institution as new employment, as new employees? And will they be under the sole control of the board in terms of the employment status and whether they remain employed or not? Mr. Speaker, I have not seen the transition plan. I can just read what is before me. And I have this concern because it seemed to me that if you employ, you discipline, you terminate staff as required, it means that it did not specify which staff. So I am assuming that it is all the staff of the institution who would be under the directive of the board. That is why I am asking, based on the plan in moving forward, so nurses that are on permanent establishment and other health persons who provide those services will fall in the category of persons. When I come to the secondment part, I will deal with it because I am not clear on what it says. I put all of these questions to the members on the government side at the time. Dr. Kenny Anthony, Honorable Sean Edward, who was raising that concern in Parliament, was there. Did any of them answer? We did not go and change any rules, you know. The Millennium Heights document was passed in the Parliament by the St. Lucia Labour Party government. And you remember what I said? Everything that the Labour Party does, it's okay. But if you do the same thing they did, it becomes wrong. So how you could pass a piece of legislation in the Parliament? And I will deal with that in greater detail. That's the level of dishonesty, hypocrisy, and lies of the St. Lucia Labour Party. And every day they come to Parliament, they tell more lies than they tell the truth. It's unfortunate that our time is usually limited to 1 hour to make a presentation. But that is why the Labour Party operatives, so Sean knows better than that. He knows that the laws that was passed concerning the hospital was passed by the Labour Party. And it is this government that we are the ones putting measures in place so that persons do not lose their benefits in any form or fashion. If they are on permanent establishment, they will be seconded for a period of time until they themselves can determine whether they want to remain with the government or whether they want to go with the other entity. And the entity that is there is not Cayman Health City, as you heard them say. The Millennium Heights Board was appointed based on the same legislation passed by the St. Lucia Labour Party. But you see, when men and women who belong to a party can come and lie to the people of a country in this manner, to what? To try and gain some votes? Why would you? If you feel what was done was so bad, why were you doing it when you were in government? That is the question. Yeah. But PM's time is precious. Yeah. We need to engage in this discourse about the economy.
Well, Mr. Prime Minister, we heard a lot.
Maybe before we get there,
Yeah.
let me just continue a little bit, because it's a very important discussion.
Right.
Why was Millennium Heights created? And a lot of persons may not have understood the rationale behind that. The fact is that Victoria Hospital was being run by the Ministry of Health.
Right.
So the PS and all the different systems. And I remember going up there and seeing the accounting system. The person that was responsible for the accounting system is the accountant general, even though they have their own
Is that normal or no?
Well, it's normal because it was considered to be government.
Okay.
So all the government falls under the trappings of government.
Okay.
And the reality is that the attention to detail that's required at a hospital does not allow it to function effectively under government.
Okay.
So even the government likes to give allocations on a quarterly basis. Who gets sick evenly? Think of it. Right? And if there's a cost change, which happens in medicine all the time. So government just is not the proper entity. If you now want to see a difference, is you go to St. Jude's. St. Jude's has been run as a statutory body. Right? And it has a very different operating system, and it reports to a board,
Right.
not to the ministry.
Right.
Ultimately, it is responsible to the state, but from a governance perspective, but not on a day-to-day operating basis. The board is the one that provides the over. No different than SLASPA.
The city council and everything else.
Okay, these are all separate entities. So Millennium Heights was created, and the assets chain put into Millennium Heights. Now, a mistake that they made from the get-go is they included Victoria Hospital from the get-go. So it meant that you have an entity that was actually the responsibility of Millennium Heights, but everybody who was working there was hired by the government.
Right.
So this is, I mean, just for people to understand structurally what we're talking about. So what had to happen was we brought Cayman Health City in to assist the board in developing as consultants an operating structure. So what's the organization chart look like? What are the job descriptions? What's the standing operating procedures? It's not until those things are in place that now you can actually offer a job to the solutions who are working at Victoria or working for the Ministry of Health. And they're free to apply. If they don't want to apply, they remain employed by the Ministry of Health. If they apply and they're successful, exactly what Minister Joseph has said, they become seconded over to this new entity.
Right.
But we felt that we would not be making progress if we did not create that statutory body. The next thing that we know is that the amount of monies that are allocated to the operating cost of the hospital is insufficient. And it's going to get even worse now that you're moving into OKEU. Fully air conditioned, it's a much bigger facility. Okay, it's much more modern. And that's the problem. We don't know. We only have an estimate of about $170 million, which is $35 million, sorry, of $70 million, which is $35 million more than what Victoria is. I find it difficult to believe it's going to be only double, but we're going to find out. This is now where the healthcare insurance comes in. So government now has agreed. It will continue to pay the salaries of all the doctors and nurses and all of the persons who are working there. So they will transfer money on a monthly basis to Millennium Heights to pay those salaries. That we will pay the utility cost and that we will pay all the capital cost. What we're hoping the insurance will pay for are the things you use. So if you're using medicine, if you're using syringes, if you're getting x-rays, if you need to go to a GP doctor, that is what the insurance is going to pay.
Right.
So what it means, exactly when you go in Champaign and you check into the hospital, they register you, right? Every time that you're using a facility, it's registered, and it gets reapplied back to the insurance. And the insurance then transfers that money back to the hospital to pay for those things. Because the problem that we've had for the years is they don't have enough money, and so somebody has to make the decision every day as to who's going to get and who's not going to get.
So can I ask where the insurance money comes from?
The insurance money comes from persons who are going to make a contribution very similar to NIC.
Okay.
So those persons who are working will now have the opportunity to get affordable insurance. We're thinking, we don't know yet, but we're hoping that the ballpark number is going to be that the insurance premium will be around $800 a year.
Yeah. So who takes the slack for the unemployed?
The government.
Government takes
So the
that
government
slack.
has set aside $40 million to pay for the persons who are unemployed, to pay for pensioners, and to pay for people on the vulnerable list.
40 million.
About 40 million
Annually.
annually.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Now, that's what the plan is.
Okay.
I think that we're going to be okay
I think
in
so.
that amount, but they will be paid. Because you see, it's not until we now get everybody to go to the doctor. Right now, there are people who just can't afford to go to the
That is
doctor.
true.
Okay?
That's true.
When you go to the doctor, like the Taiwanese system, the doctor will report not champagne, but he'll say a male, a certain
Right.
age, etc., and put your statistics into a national database. So what that will tell the Ministry of Health is, on a very accurate basis, what's the health of your nation? How many people have hyper blood pressure? How many people are pre-diabetic? And what the conditions are. It means now that the Ministry of Health can actually tailor-make programs and see if it's affecting. So the first thing that we must do as a country is recognize how much non-communicable diseases, NCDs, high blood pressure, high blood pressure, as well as high blood sugar, how much it's costing us. Because that's a risk. Now, if in fact you're able to reduce it, even if it's to national averages, your cost of insurance is going to go down. So we're going to have to put too much money initially into curing non-communicable diseases, and it's a cost to the nation. But we will be able to actually give people what those numbers are going to be.
So we have thousands of self-employed people on the island. How do we go around to have those people to get involved with that insurance?
So that's the advantage here. By getting the entire population buying the insurance program, reduces the cost of the program.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So persons who now cannot afford to get insurance now can afford to get insurance. And companies who currently have insurance, they're allowed to stay with their insurance company, but if they want to come over to us, they can. And how do we work with the existing insurance companies that people now can top up?
Top up.
So if you get a basic insurance program, if you now want to have more things covered, cancer, a whole bunch of other things, and you want to be able to travel abroad, then you'll include that.
Yeah.
Our insurance really is to cover what people can't afford right now.
Yes, I understand. It's just like a car policy and insurance. So you cover for fires, or you want to cover for flood,
Or third party.
I understand.
Right?
Yes.
But the key here, though, Champagne, is to get the process started, that we solve two things, that we're now going to provide proper health care. Because I cannot tell you that the country has been providing proper health care. Like what's happened in the past, people use terms, national health care insurance, and everybody means that it's free. And sadly, people go to the hospital thinking that it's entirely free.
Yeah.
All right? And we're not very good at collecting the money. St. Jude's is much better at collecting the money than Victoria is. So this will go a long ways. I think we all understand the importance of a proper healthcare system. This is why now, again, what's happening at St. Jude's is actually physically larger than the OKEU hospital.
Really?
Yeah, by 15%.
How would you break that down? You said physically larger. How does that work out?
In square footage, am I right?
Yes,
Really?
the new St. Jude we are building.
Oh, the new St. Come on.
Right.
I was thinking the
new St. Jude that we're building, the
Of
new
course.
hospital that we're building.
Yes, of course.
Because people, it's a
yeah.
continuation. This is a new building.
Oh, that
This
I
is-
know,
We're
without a
creating
doubt.
a state-of-the-art
I know.
hospital.
Yeah, I've been there several times.
And so,
on the
again,
outside.
solutions are getting accustomed to my terminology. The goal is to generate revenue streams for that hospital. So we're in discussions with a country outside that are having difficulties, and they have a huge waiting list for people who need operations. We might be taking some of their surplus. We're talking to the cruise industry about getting their crew to come. What does that do? That means that you're getting a greater amount of usage, you're generating revenue because they will pay much more than what a solution would pay, and that now helps subsidize the overall cost of healthcare in our country. We're too small. And so we have to open up our markets and find very creative ways to be able to become viable. So we want to have world-class services, but the reality is 180,000 per population, given the size of our overall economy, is insufficient to do that.
How much is it costing the government, Mr. Prime Minister, to have Well, not anymore Victoria, but when we had full-fledged Victoria Hospital, how much did it cost the government to operate on a yearly basis?
35 million.
A year?
Yeah.
35 million?
Right. And it was grossly inadequate.
Whoa.
Grossly inadequate. And again, you know, this is how the budget system works. You know, everybody just puts down the same number. Right? So whereas when I came in, I was challenging the Ministry of Health to tell me, how much does it cost? But to be honest with you, they couldn't.
No.
Because their accounting system didn't allow them to do it. The system was so broken. Right? It's impossible. It's impossible.
So if we go, and I'm happy that PM expounded on this, because it's the season when you will hear people promising a lot of things.
Oh, yeah.
That,
We heard a lot
and we cannot run away from the fact that I heard the Labour Party talk about UWP has been in office for 40 years and 50 years, and it really doesn't matter how many years. And I will say that in relation to the member for Castries East. It's not how many years you are there, it's what you've done in the number of years.
Yeah.
And the development of St. Lucia. So let's say for argument that the UWP has been there double the time that Labour has been there. But they've done 6 times the amount of things that Labour
Without
has
a
done.
doubt.
So at the end of the day, it is coming to terms with what is before us. Who is best placed to develop, modernize, and take this country forward? And that is why in the discussion pertaining to the economy, because I heard the leader of the opposition, I mean, I really expected a more spirited debate from the members opposite, given that's the last debate before budget, before going into elections. Because I can compare, when I was in opposition, I could have compared my record of achievement during my first 5 years with the persons who were there.
Yeah.
I expected the Labour Party to come into the budget and to say, look here, this is how we governed for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
This is what we did. Let's compare it with your 5 years. And I think that's where we need to go.
Of course. That is what I said.
That's where we need to go.
Yeah.
So we don't even have to go back prior to 2006. We can go from 2011 to 2016
Yes.
and 2016
to now.
to 2021.
That is right.
And I'm not even leaving out the COVID. We will come to that in greater detail. But PM, I mean, when you came in, during the campaign, you asked for 3 years to help get the economy on the right footing. What was it you really had in mind when you asked for these 3 years?
Well, throughout my life, whenever you're trying to restructure something, it takes about 3 years. Because there's always going to be that initial resistance, and then it takes a period of time before people start seeing the evidence that you start getting buy-in. So the changes for St. Lucia were not just physical, but it was also the institutions. So the problem that we had is we had a country that economically or accounting-wise, you would say was hemorrhaging. Okay? Year after year, we were spending more money than we were earning. And we were making up that by borrowing money. And so every year you're borrowing more and more and more money. So what you saw is during the period of 2011 or 2012 when they came into office until 2016, that the Labour Party was adding 7.3% to the debt of the country every single year. So that was the deficit that they were carrying. Any good economist would immediately look at 2 numbers. What is the average increase in debt relative to what you're growing? So just as a litmus test to understand whether you're moving in the right direction. So ideally, you would like to be growing the economy faster than you're growing your debt. Okay? So if you look at the economic growth numbers for that period, which were rebased, the average growth rate for the 5 years was minus 0.2%. So 0.2 of 1% negative growth. So in essence, the GDP didn't grow.
It didn't move, no.
Okay, but you grew your debt by almost 40%.
Yeah.
Okay? Compare that now to us, that when we came in, that we were able to, we only, up until COVID, we were only adding 3.3% to the debt every year, and the economy was growing at an average rate of 2.5%. Right? So still not 100% where you want to be, but that gap now was less than 1%, whereas the gap previously was 7.7% gap.
But the opposition spoke a lot about contraction, and I was trying to figure out where they got all that contraction from. They were saying that it has been contracted, the economy, and they were not even talking about the coronavirus era. They were talking about...
the economy, was the growth figure was rebased, not rebased, was confirmed for 2019 at minus 0.1%.
Right.
So minus 1/10 of 1%. So in essence, in 2019, the economy didn't grow.
It didn't move, no.
Okay? And a large part of that was some significant projects that we wanted to get done. The Sandals expansion, which got stopped by
the landings. Courts, yeah.
The Canellis project. You had the National Trust.
That's right.
Saying that they want to do another study on archaeological. Okay, that was done. Nothing was found. They did the same thing at Cabot. You've now heard that the archaeologists came out and said there's nothing there. So each one of these things delays the project. You had now the police headquarters, which was supposed to have started. They went down, they held the whole thing up, did not happen. Now, these things happen, but the fact is tourism grew by its largest amount, and we hit record levels in tourism in 2019, and that helped balance off the entire thing. In terms of revenue, remember, it's the growth is on a calendar year from January to December, but the budget is on a budget year, which goes until March 31st. So the last 2 months, February and March in particular of 2020, because of COVID, the revenues numbers came down. So that's why there was a slight decline in our revenue numbers. But going back to Guy's point, we came in and we understood there were structural problems in the country, both institutional, dealing with ministries that were doing exactly what the Ministry of Health, just repeating the same number over and over again. And it was to ask everybody a simple question. If you know what you know now, and you're only going to get the same amount of money I'm currently giving you, how would you restructure your ministry? Okay? And once you figure that out, give me now a 3-year plan in order to be able to do that. Parallel to that, we now created the delivery unit where we went around and we said, if we need to grow this country by double of its GDP, what will we need to do? And that's where the midterm plan came in. So we had to have consultations, we had to have meetings, get buy-in to the whole thing. Then the big one really is when we came in, we said, let us reduce VAT rate. Because we all felt that the VAT rate was too high. And the ultimate goal is to bring VAT down again. And eventually, with consultation with the World Bank and the IMF and CDB and the ECCB, is to replace the VAT with a sales tax. And the rationale for that, Champagne, is businesses generally bring in products that are already made. So there's no added value. So what happens is you pay a VAT at the point of entry, and it increases the cost of inventory. So the business person is holding that stuff there until they sell it, but they've actually paid the VAT on it. And it's not until they sell it to you that they reclaim the VAT.
Now, I've had various conversations in that regard with so many people that call into the program in the morning, and they're saying, if that is a better way to go, why has it not been instituted? Why has it not been done?
Because, and that's a very good question, particularly where we are in the context of where we are right now. Anybody who makes a recommendation on tax or amendment to any tax must show you the whole picture. So for instance, when I met with the World Bank and the IMF, we said we believe that by reducing the VAT rate, we actually would stimulate more in the economy and we would recover the revenue that we lost. Remember they projected that we would lose 50 million?
Right.
In the first year we lost 15 and within 6 months later, 18 months later, we'd recovered the revenue. But we had also introduced the gas tax and we also introduced the airport tax. Now the airport tax, only those persons who travel pay the tax.
That's right.
And the majority of people who are traveling are tourists. So in essence, the tourists were really paying the tax. And then in terms of the gas tax, only those persons who are driving pay the tax.
That's true.
So you only, you pay as you go along the thing. Those two generated $100 million in tax revenue.
Oh, wow.
So I was able to say to the World Bank and the IMF, okay, if I'm wrong, here is this revenue to back it up. But what I had to agree was not to spend the money in the first year.
Ah, so you had to save, put that somewhere.
I had to hold it.
Yeah.
Right? And after the first year, what happened was the VAT revenue only went down by $15 million. Tourism arrivals, which they said would have gone down, went up by 11%. Okay?
Yeah.
And the gas tax increase was offset by the reduction in the VAT, so there was no inflation. And so, boy, the World Bank called me up and they said, wow, can't believe this.
How did you do it?
Okay?
Yeah.
And now what happened is that $100 million, as we will see, became the seed money to drive our capital investment program. Because you remember, the government couldn't borrow money.
That is true. That's what they said.
Okay? So what we did is we generated our own revenue base to go out now and borrow money on the basis of the tax.
You had the evidence to show.
So we had $98, $25 went to SLASPA, $35 went to the airport, and $60 went to the government.
Mr. Prime Minister, I want to ring the bell there for you, and I'll tell you why I'm ringing the bell. There's a big word everybody uses, especially politicians, and that word is accountability. Tonight you are here saying to St. Lucians, that money that was saved, you are now telling, and you have said it before, but this is the accountability everybody wants to hear. You're saying that money had been put aside to show the IMF, and it was there, so you were able. You understand what I'm saying? The accountability, you letting St. Lucians know how you accounted for everything.
Now, meanwhile, to Guy's point, what we did was use that space, that time that we were able to buy ourselves, to go now and restructure government. So the tough decisions on Radio St. Lucia, the tough decisions on the Fishing Marketing Board, okay, tough decisions on a lot of different ministries. Sir Arthur Lewis, tighten up, make people more accountable. What we're doing in healthcare, because healthcare was the greatest crisis that we had. All right, the police force. All of these things now is to put greater levels of scrutiny, more accountability, to streamline and control those cost initiatives, right? And guess what happened? The business community responded, because the only way that you were able to get the same amount of revenue off of a lower VAT rate is more activity.
That's right.
And then the private sector started investing. Now, the next difficult thing that we had was to find somebody to lend us the money based on that revenue stream.
Okay.
And what I did is I put a lot of pressure on my good friends in Taiwan and said, look, you have the third largest reserves in the world. I don't want any grant money. Lend me the money.
All right. Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. Lend me the money for the airport. Lend me the money for feeder roads. Lend me money for the other roads. And they lent me the money. And they lent me the money at concessional terms. So we got to 5-year moratorium, 1.5% plus LIBOR, capped at 4%, okay, and 20 years. So that created the seed money now. But guess what? He can tell you, because it was his ministry. The negotiations, because you have to go through first the cabinet in Taiwan, then you have to go through the Exim Bank. You have to deal with, I mean, I told him at one point, boy, if I knew it was going to be this difficult, I'm not so sure I would have done it.
Yes, yes.
But the fact is, we did it, and that's what took time.
It took some time.
We also were arguing on an international basis about access to concessional funds as small island developing states. And finally, our pleas were heard, and the IDA concession, which was at $18 million a year, was increased to $60 million a year. Right? And that came just in 2018. So all of the things to fund the expansion of our programs and the work that we had to do to create the viability for those things is what took the 3 years.
I see.
That's in essence. So building and fixing up the schools, starting the road programs, and creating the resilience in the economy, and gaining confidence of both the business community and everyone else that we were on the right track. So that first year, everybody was holding their breath to see whether things would turn around. And guess what? We reduced the deficit and we increased revenue. So if you go to 2018-19, which was the last year before COVID, we actually had increased the total revenue to the government by $240 million.
Wow.
And that does not include all of the taxes that we had, right? Just by building up economic activity. But we kept the growth of the expenses was only 147 million. So we had a net gain of $100 million,
Yeah.
right? So these are the things that we were doing, Champagne, and it was hard work. I mean, Guy can tell you, that first meeting with the World Bank and the IMF in cabinet room, 4.5 hours.
Huh.
Right? And that doesn't include the meetings that we had in Washington, D.C., and the meetings that we had at CDB in trying to get them to buy in. So, for instance, the famous one is the street lights. And the Labour Party brought this up again as an example.
Yeah, they did.
Right? And said, we had the loan there. Well, the new structure meant do not borrow money that you don't have to borrow. So I said, wait a second, why are we borrowing this money? This is something that the private sector would be happy to do, because the revenue is the savings between what you're paying for the lights now and the savings that you would get when you put the LED lights in. So the business person pays themselves back on that savings. So government keeps paying the $10 as an example, but it's only costing them $7, and the $3 is what's paying the financing. But what happens, Champagne, it is the same thing, but it doesn't count as my debt. So that's $15 million that we kept off the debt. The desilting of the dam. Originally, that was what CDB was requiring us to give a government guarantee. Another $27 million that would have been towards our debt. I said, no way. It has a revenue stream. We're assigning the revenue stream to it. We're not going to give you a guarantee. And it took us 6 months, but we were able to make that through. These are the tough decisions. But guess what? Each one of those little savings starts adding up and creates now fiscal space for you. And that's what the country didn't have. The country had no fiscal space. That's why the former government couldn't borrow any money, because they said, wait a second, the amount of money you're earning, the amount of money you owe, and the amount of expenses you have,
we can't borrow you.
We can't lend you any more money. We've reached your limit as to what we can lend you. So these are the tough decisions that we had to make in those first 3 years to clean up the balance sheet of the country, get people's mindset to change, and now start holding people on an evidence-based decision. I don't care what you think. Give me numbers that you're going to generate. You meet with me on a quarterly basis to show me that you're on target to meet those numbers.
In fact, I know PM is very moderate at times in terms of what he's been able to do as Prime Minister. Champagne, I have been around the politics for long enough. And what we have been able to accomplish under this Prime Minister is nothing short of a miracle in terms of the economy of this country.
Yeah.
And that's why I said to the Labour Party in the budget debate, if time had permitted, I would have given them a basic lesson on economics. And our people in St. Lucia had GDP all the time. And I'm not sure that everybody may have a full layman's understanding or appreciation. GDP is gross domestic product. What is the total production of the country? So whether it be in the manufacturing sector...
Well, do it as if it's a household. How would you measure the GDP of a household?
Everything, all the money that is brought into the household collectively by all the activities. So somebody may be a farmer, somebody may be washing a car, Another person may cut the grass for somebody's lawn.
Right.
Another person may be working in an office. When you combine all the activities of these people together, what does it add up to?
Right.
That becomes the GDP of the household. So the same applies for the country. So when we talk about, if you want to know how well an economy is performing, is how much activity there is. So we call it the price by the quantity gives you the GDP. So if you wash 10 cars, and in washing the 10 cars, you made $50. And then it's mango season, so you sold 2 boxes of mangoes. Plus the household income of all of the people who are employed. When you put all of that, and if you have a little barbecue on the weekend, that is also adding to the GDP of the household. So I want persons to appreciate, when we talk about GDP, it is how much economic activity that you cause to happen in the country. Now what I want to highlight is, what did we inherit when we were elected into office in 2016? But I want to, and that's why I said, let's compare the last 5 years of Labour Party with our 5 years. In 2011, what was the GDP of St. Lucia when Labour Party came into office? You have the numbers there, Pierre?
St. Lucia, pay attention. This is
now,
important.
now, that's not a book that we wrote. That's the same. I think it's on page
93.
Table 2, 92.
Yeah, right here.
Page 92.
So the GDP in 2011 was
Into
was
the mic, Pierre.
the GDP
Thanks.
in 2011 was 5,960 million.
That is what was left over from the UWP, or that is what was...
Not be. It's 5 billion. It's
5
5
billion.
point.
5.09 billion.
5.09.
Yeah.
That is in 2011.
Yes.
That was what was left over
That's
from the...
5
No,
billion.
when we left office,
Right, that's what
Yes.
I'm saying.
that's what the GDP was.
Right, yes.
And then when they left office in 2016, it was 5,234 million. 5 billion,
5
sorry.
billion, okay.
$234 billion.
Yes. Now, why is this important? Because when the Labour Party came into
Well,
office,
actually, the number you
So
really
that
want
was-
to take, the number you want to take is 2015. So the 2015 number was 5,060 million.
That was not too much of a big difference between the two.
No.
no. So here's what happened, Champagne.
Because remember what I told you, the GDP contracted by 0.2%, 0.2 by 2.2%
Right,
every year.
right.
So by 5, it contracted by 1%.
So if we go back, and I want St. Lucians to pay careful attention, and the economists and the different people who want to try and defend the track record of the Labour Party. So in 2011, when UWP lost the elections in November of 2011, which meant that the financial year had almost run through already, we left a GDP of $5,096,800,000. That was the level of activity within the economy if you quantify the price of all economic activity in St. Lucia. In 2012, it went down to 5,091,200,000.
So we lost
200,000. So it had gone down by about
5 million.
500,
No,
about
but
5 million.
Yeah.
In 2013, it went to 4,989,100,000. So remember, they got
So
it
you
at
lost-
5 billion,
Yes.
91 million.
96 million. That's what you said.
In 2013, it was already down to 4,989 million. I'll just round off the number.
Yeah.
In 2014, it went back up to 5,055 million. But it has not reached what they got it at in 2011.
Yeah. So they did a little better in 14.
Yes.
Based on their own numbers.
Oh, that is their numbers.
No. When I say based on
Their
because
performance.
there's a base figure that you have to
based
use.
on their performance.
Based on their performance.
Right. So it went up.
Then in 2015, it went up to 5,060 million.
5 million.
Another 5 million.
So what
addition.
you found overall, where they found the economy
They never grew it.
in 2011 at 5,091 million, and then when they left it, it was at 5,060 million, which meant that they had dropped the economy overall from where they got it by 41 million dollars.
Yeah, the economy declined by 1% over their tenure.
So
they never grew it at all.
So exactly my point. And now that is where what the PM has done, when I say it's nothing, immediately upon coming into office, the same economy that was at 5 billion,
60 million.
60 million. And PM, that's why the explanation that PM gave in terms of his approach towards the 3 years and what we did in the first year, how it began to pay dividend. What was the performance of the economy immediately upon UWP coming into office? And they'll tell you, is what they had put in place. But you had 5 years with the same things in place. You couldn't grow it. So why would I believe in that 6th year is when you would have been able to grow it?
The guy doesn't want to take into account what they inherited. The St. Lucia was the only economy to have grown in the OECS in 2011.
Right.
Okay? And was also the only economy to grow in 2010.
And that was after Hurricane Thomas.
Right. So we were the fastest growing economy in the OECS. So if you remember, St. Lucia now became the largest economy in the OECS, during that period.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
Okay? So it's not to say that they would. So you're talking about that in 2011, 2010, with Thomas, right, we had growth of 0.5%. And with 2011, a growth of 4.3%. So it's not to say that they inherited an economy that was sluggish.
Failing, right?
We, on the other hand, inherited an economy that was faltering, had not grown.
No.
And if anything that was growing was the deficits.
So where we are today?
So let's look at what happened, because people must take time to understand this step by step. In 2016, when this Prime Minister managed the economy, we inherited it at 5,060 million. By the end of 2016, it was 5,234 million. A growth of $174 million in economic activity that can be quantified in the country.
Now, you know, they have made an argument that the election was called in half of that year, so that could have been attributed to their performance. I've heard them say
but
that.
it wasn't,
No.
because they did the budget. Remember, they did the budget and called the elections right afterwards.
March.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we implemented the budget.
The budget came out in June.
No, I'm saying the financial year was at the end of
It
March.
ended, but remember, they didn't come out to the budget until after the after the
That is
period.
right. That is right. You're right on that. In that year.
So, and I want person. So if we look at that year, then, and we go to 2019, because COVID is an outlier, as we would say. COVID is out of the norm. So I want to take it from 2 angles. I will come to the COVID part. But you see, when I tell people, St. Lucia has the best Prime Minister that it could possibly have.
Oh, they know that. They know that.
At this point in time, the numbers testified to what I am saying there. This is not because Prime Minister is my friend or we on the same
but you
team.
always say it when he's
The
not there.
numbers are there, but his performance.
That's right.
Look here, you can say you run a marathon in 20 minutes. The record is what will show when the clock gives
you finish
what
at 4
time.
hours. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, you
so that is what the numbers. So if we look at by 2019, the GDP of St. Lucia, which we inherited from the Labour Party at 5,060 million, was at 5,572 million.
Wow. Wow.
In other words, in 4 years, Prime Minister Chasney had grown economic activity in St. Lucia by $500 million. $500 million.
Yeah.
So the level of activity within the economy, and he gave a breakdown of some of the things that was done. So prior to COVID hitting St. Lucia, and I can safely tell you that if COVID had not hit St. Lucia with the level of economic activity that we had going on prior to COVID, we might have been bordering on 6 billion.
Of course,
now,
without a doubt.
Prime Minister said that in 10 years, his aim was to double the GDP of this country.
I remember that statement.
And the question is, were we on track to be able to do so? So if you look at the growth, so let's say by now we would have been at 6 billion in the economy had COVID not hit us.
Right.
By the time you would have spent another 5 years, you don't think we could add another $3 billion?
Exactly. Looking at 10 billion.
And the way that you do that is to understand your capacity
To grow.
to grow. So the question is, why was St. Lucia not growing? So
That's
I'm
a
going
big
to give you a classic example. You work at HIA. Could HIA take any more passengers?
No, it could not.
You think an investor coming to St. Lucia doesn't see that there's a capacity problem? I'm going to build another 300 rooms or whatever.
Yeah. How do I get my people in?
How do I get my people in?
How do I get my people
St.
in?
Lucia's flights were already full. Airport is full.
Yeah, the airlines, aircrafts keep circling all the time. They can't land.
So you've got to resolve the tarmac problem, which is the taxiway.
That's right.
The navigation, so that people are not coming in on site. They can
Right.
do it now electronically, right? And you have to have a larger terminal. The roads.
Yep.
Do you remember what the traffic was like when we started getting this economy going?
Oh, yeah, I know.
All of a sudden,
No.
to go from Castries to Rodney Bay,
Rodney Bay, an
almost
hour and a half.
doubled in time. It came like over an hour.
Yeah, everyone.
In fact, we used to have to measure it every day to try to figure out ways to reduce
yeah.
the amount of traffic that was taking place. Not enough roads. So fixing up the back roads immediately was important. And now working on this north-south highway, particularly from Dennery up to the Rodney Bay area, the Groselet area, is critical. You need to get all of these big trucks off of that primary road. All the people who are coming from the south who want to go to the north who don't need to come through Castries. You have to find a more efficient way to distribute your goods and services around the country. People need to spend less time in traffic. So just think of Barbados without the ABC highway. Okay? If it was the old way, because that's how we used to be.
Yeah, yeah.
All right? It cannot grow. When I look at Jamaica and I see the new highway from Negril to Montego Bay to Ocho Rios, and then the new highway from Ocho Rios to Kingston, it's night and day. It reduces wear and tear on vehicles. It reduces the consumption of fuel. It means that a person can do 2-3 trips in a day instead of just doing one trip.
Yeah.
Right? These things add up to businesses and to the quality of life
Movement.
of everybody else.
Yeah.
We had a water problem. How are you going to build any hotels in the south when there was only 1 million gallons a day? And you had the grace intake that every time it rained, there was no water.
Yeah.
Who's
When
going to
it's dry,
invest?
no water. When it's raining,
Can
no
you believe
water.
that?
Okay? So the fact is that from a physical perspective, you had these constraints. That's what this midterm strategy was all about. How do we unlock the potential of St. Lucia? Why is it that people were having to go down to get a driver's license? Why do you have to go and get a passport and take a line? Why can't you apply for these things online and then they're delivered to you to your home? So all of a sudden now, that's one less trip that you have to make. So when you come home from work, you can now sit online and make the application because it's available to you 24/7. So all of a sudden, your productivity as an individual increases. So this is when we talk about expanding the capacity of the country. This is what we're talking about. And we're saying, okay, let us focus on agriculture. The only way for us to be successful in agriculture is to produce things that we can produce on a year-round basis. Asking people, hotels to import, to get tomatoes only part of the year, cabbages part of the year, watermelons part of the year, is inefficient. So let's pick the things that we know that we can produce, focus on those things. Why is bananas and why is cocoa so important? The consumption of bananas globally is a $3 billion business. We have the ability of planting as many bananas as we can and selling them. The problem has been the quality of the bananas. And that's what we're hoping to fix with the FTO. They were not doing a good enough job of making sure the selection process of the bananas that were going overseas were to standard. And when the bananas were now getting into the UK, they were being rejected. So they either now had to be sold at a substantially lesser price or they had to be destroyed. Both ways, it was costing the farmers money. You've got to solve that problem here in St. Lucia. But we know that we need to get to a minimum number of bananas to bring back the economics in that. My government is committed to that. When you see the marketing campaign that we have. So again, when persons come on vacation here from the UK, we want, when they walk around the staff, they have the thing of our St. Lucian banana. The little flags on the banana bread. We want them to produce banana coladas. We want them to produce banana daiquiris. We want to have competitions of all the different banana recipes that we can create. And create this demand that nobody can come to St. Lucia and not know that St. Lucia has the best bananas in the world.
Yeah, that is for sure.
Okay.
Now, you know the Labour Party has tried desperately, and you heard them, every 6 member spoke about the exportation of bananas to France. But my own little knowledge, I remember when this banana to France came about, that exportation to France, I remember there was a hurricane. If it's not a hurricane, maybe it was a tropical storm heavily. And Martinique was heavily damaged. The industry, the banana industry, and I believe, I'm not saying I'm right, I believe that Martinique wanted to get a fault because we did not get hit as bad as Martinique during that storm. I don't know if you remember that, maybe Mr. Minister.
The first problem was that there was a reduction in bananas, and the UK needed more bananas.
Right.
So we had to meet that market
fill in
demand
that
because we were supposed to be doing 3 containers.
Right.
To go to France to test. So the minister and myself went to France, went to the market, understood the distribution system. So he wanted to test our market in the product.
Right.
When we were supposed to do that, all of a sudden we couldn't export the bananas there. Then the next thing that happened was that there was a big problem in Martinique, and the supply stopped going through that channel. Then when we sent it now to the UK to go over, we had problems with Winfresh. So they're still committed.
Yes.
But the point is that just getting them to be tested and opening up a new market, but we're committed to that.
But Martinique is a more heavily banana producer than St. Lucia by far. By far. So it's not like France is dependent on St. Lucia bananas. Maybe if we get a break, we'll accept it. But Martinique provides bananas to France.
What was interesting, what happened and what created the demand for the St. Lucia product was they created a thing called the French banana.
Okay.
And it was something, I mean, it sounds complicated, right? But it was actually very simple.
Yeah.
What they did is when it arrived in France, they took the bananas and wrapped them with a plastic wrap. So
that's our bananas or?
No, their bananas.
Their bananas, okay.
So it became the French banana. Okay. So it was a wrap that had the French flag on it. So it either wrapped 2 bananas, 3 bananas, 4 bananas, or 5 bananas. And what that did, it made it easier to sell. So it had a barcode on it. So when it went to the smaller grocery stores,
Yeah.
there was less wastage for the grocery store guy. Because when you go to the grocery store, some people are breaking off the banana.
Oh, I see, yes.
And when they break off the banana,
They touch some and they soften everything.
Correct.
Right.
And so
Yes.
this became the French banana, and they charged a premium for that banana, just simply by having a wrap on it.
Oh, I see.
And it did so well, the general market, they needed more bananas. And so the intent was to bring St. Lucia's bananas in to complement those French bananas. That's what the regime was.
Okay.
And so first of all, they had to test it to make sure that the bananas were going to be acceptable. How was it going to be shipped up there? How long was it going to take? Were we going to do it through the UK? Were we going to do it through France? So the commitment is still there. They want to do it, but now we have a problem. We had the Black Sigatoga again. And now we're getting over that. Then we had another problem we're now getting resolved. Then we had the problem with NFTO. We're going to get that problem resolved. So this is difficult. And I know that the farmers themselves have been through a tough period.
Yeah.
But
Very
I
tough period.
want them to know, right, that we're in this thing for the long haul.
I deliberately brought that up because I heard every member of the opposition talk about bananas to France, bananas to France. So I'm happy that you cleared that
Yes.
up a little bit.
So let me take up another issue here, that because, and I have the UWP manifesto of 2016. Here's what the Prime Minister, then not Prime Minister at the time, political leader of the United Workers' Party, he said specifically the UWP intends to, one, achieve an accumulated growth rate of at least 12% in the first term. This is what, and that's what I want St. Lucians to understand. Look here, we are not asking you to vote and support us blindly, like the Labour Party, who cannot show you a track record.
Right.
The Prime Minister gave a commitment. He said, look here, in light of the situation, now remember, coming in to inherit an economy that had been in decline for 4 years under the Labour Party, and to come in and to say that my goal is, and that's why I tell them, you have to aim high.
You have to aim high.
You may not achieve what you aim for, but if you get close enough, then you will be on the right track. So the Prime Minister said that he wanted to achieve a growth rate of 12% in his first term. Prior to COVID, we were at 9.7%. Prior to COVID.
Yes.
Now
Yeah.
tell me,
With all the activity you see.
tell me if COVID had not happened,
Yeah.
that we would not, so, because you know how much we needed, another 2.3%
yeah, that's
growth
right.
to hit the target
target.
of 12%.
Yeah.
12%. Now, why am I saying this? Because I have had the opportunity to work with this Prime Minister. And when he sets a goal,
Yeah.
he works towards achieving it. I heard them making a big fuss about, oh, visa-free access to
Yes.
the US.
Yes.
That's not what the Prime Minister said. The Prime Minister said that we have to make St. Lucia so good as a country
That's right.
that people have to ask, why would you live there and go there?
Yeah.
And then you would be in a position where visas would not become an issue. Now we've,
And that exists. The Bahamas,
That is
yes,
right.
Cayman.
Bermuda,
Yeah, Bermuda. That's
Cayman,
Right.
okay? No visas. Why?
Right. Yeah.
Because these are countries which have a standard of living that nobody's going to want to leave. They're not a threat.
But even with the visas, we've made strides that we
Correct.
never made under the Labour Party. Now, if your passport is expired, and I heard they extended the time even further.
And you can get all your renewals can be done from here.
From
Once
here.
you've got your first visa, you don't
Yeah.
need to go back
You
to
don't need
Barbados.
go over there. Yes.
So you just can send your
send it in,
your
yeah.
passport over, and then they get it renewed.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what happened. You had to go to Trinidad to get the Canadian passport.
Now you can
So
do it here.
So when you look at what this Prime Minister has done internationally, so I want to highlight this. So prior to COVID, we were at the 9.7%. Now that's not the only thing he promised. Not promised, but he aimed to achieve.
Yes.
He said reduce the overall level of unemployment to no more than 15%.
Yeah. That was done.
This is what
We
the
were close.
Prime Minister said was his aim.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why I said, even if he didn't reach it,
No, we were
but
not.
at least we were aiming for something. But prior to
we couldn't do
COVID,
it.
we were at 16.9%
Prior to COVID. Huh?
prior to COVID.
Yeah.
So
That is
at
great
the
achievement.
end of the day, when I tell people, I'm not saying this to make the Prime Minister feel good.
It
Or-
is there.
I'm saying that there is the record to show
Numbers
that
don't
what
lie.
he has accomplished under these terms and conditions is nothing short of a miracle in managing the economy of this country. And you will hear the persons opposite giving. So if I use just these two basic benchmarks, another one they always use on us is they say, oh, the Prime Minister said he would eliminate VAT in this term.
Yeah, they use
Here's
that
what the
one.
manifesto says. Reduce the value added tax and outline a plan for the ultimate elimination and replacement. And replace it with a restructured tax regime that will be less burdensome but without compromising the revenue base.
Now, the first line of that is what is significant. Reduce. It didn't say take it out because that's what it said.
And within the
Reduce.
first year, he reduced it by
Okay.
2.5%.
So it's actually by 17%. So it reduced it from 15% to 12.5%. That's a 17% reduction.
But if you take 100%, because the overall VAT is 100%, which
Right.
is 15.
right.
Okay.
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 So if it's at 15 and you reduce it by 2.5%, it's a 17% reduction. Okay.
And all this great achievement is prior to COVID, huh?
Yeah, prior to COVID. But I want to say this, that the goal has been, and I've continued to articulate the next steps. We want to reduce the VAT further. We'd like to take VAT to 10%. We're in long discussions with the World Bank and the IMF and CDB. These are our partners.
But you would not be able to put in the sales tax until you eliminate the VAT. Is that a fact?
Well, what I'm saying to you is that if you can get to the 10%, the 10% will come with a critical component. And that is a social safety net. So what's a social safety net? Right now, we have 2,200 people on a vulnerability list. Do you really believe there's only 2,200
never.
vulnerable?
There's more.
Okay? And how much do they get? $215 a month.
Yeah, that is insane.
Okay? So a social net is on the basis that, first of all, we have an ID and we know what everybody's status is. So if you're a single mother, you don't have a high school education, you don't have a job, and you have 3 kids, the state has to help you. Right? So it means that she should not be looking for, she should automatically get the school transportation for her kids, school feeding program for her kids. She should be getting money. She should be getting electricity subsidy. She should be getting a housing subsidy. She should be getting clothing, all right?
And the health care.
And the health care. Okay? Automatically. But in order to do that, we have to have a significant structural change in our economy. Let me deal with it 2 separate things.
Right.
When we had COVID and we started to give out the food, we found out Red Cross has a list. Equity had a list.
Disaster
The disaster preparedness had a
Yeah,
list.
anymore,
And the
anymore.
MPs, all of them, opposition and government,
Yeah.
had lists.
Yeah.
Many of those lists, if you went to it, it was the same household.
Oh boy.
So people would use different names, and I don't blame them. So when the amount that you're getting is so small, people are going to find every
to get
single way.
any
So
other,
I'm not
yeah.
here to criticize
I
them for that.
understand,
But
yeah.
that's what the reality is. So what you want to do is make sure people aren't double dipping if you're going to take care of people properly.
Right.
The next problem you have, every single St. Lucian benefits from the subsidy on LPG gas. Every single St. Lucian and businesses and foreigners benefit from the subsidy on rice, flour, and sugar. Everybody. So is that the way it should be designed? Or should we really be providing the benefit to the people who need
Oh,
it?
less fortunate. Yeah.
Okay? And we have to determine what that threshold is. So because now everybody's registered, you know what income people's households are earning, then you can determine the level of support that we can provide. But the support now is going to go directly to those persons. Why is this important? Because really the VAT rate should be a constant VAT rate. Having different VAT rates complicates the whole thing. So if you're going to go to 10% and you're now starting getting towards a sales tax, the sales tax is across the board.
Right.
And the advantage of a sales tax, it'll be less, but it'll be less burdensome to the public, and it will also be less onerous to the businesses, because as I explained to you, instead of having to pay the tax at the point of entry, they're only paying it when the product is being sold. But we have to convince the World Bank and the IMF and CDB and ECCB of one important thing. It is generally believed around the world that a VAT system is more efficient in collecting the money than a sales tax.
Is that right?
Yeah, because remember, you're getting it at the point of entry.
But I'm still hearing there are a lot of merchants that beat the system in terms of paying the VAT money.
It's difficult.
And a lot of money.
Yeah, it's difficult. The only way that people avoid it is not registering for VAT. And whether, in fact, we do a good enough job
On that.
of that, that's a different story.
Okay.
But once you're participating in a VAT structure, because you're capturing it at the point of entry, it becomes easier. Maybe the $400,000 threshold is too high of a threshold, right? So when I went to Estonia, and Estonia has created an e-government system. And why is it so important to create an e-government system? It's much easier to distribute goods and services, and it makes it easier for you to work internationally, right? Because people can do business much easier with you. You must simplify things. So you must simplify your tax structure in order for us to be able to calculate it.
Yeah.
So we believe as a government and as a party that lower taxes that are easy to calculate are more efficient. People are not going to spend time, champagne, trying to avoid to pay the tax if they think it's a fair tax. But when a tax is too high, people sit there and go, you know, like when the VAT was 15%, people were bawling. Okay? Just the reduction to 12.5% gave people confidence. Far less would we believe when we get to the 10%, how much more impactful that's going to be. So we want to create a fair system. And also you must have a system in which recognizes the different income levels. So for instance, there was a person that was recommending that they eliminate personal income tax and only use VAT. Now that's not fair, because the poorer people earning lesser of an income, are proportionately going to pay a greater part of their income in taxes than people who are wealthier. Okay? So you have to find that balance. So anytime anybody gives you a tax recommendation, it must show you where you're going to make up the loss of income, and therefore you must understand the entire picture. So we know the next step is getting this social net system, which is very important, and that persons who are vulnerable in our society are being adequately helped. And we stop fooling ourselves that we're helping poor people by putting them on the paupers list of getting $215.
So when the opposition leader spoke to that, he was just was that a bluff in regards to him bringing down that revenue?
I think
I'm trying to remember what he said.
I think that what he's proposed needs a lot of fleshing out, and I would not want to pass comment. I would not want to pass comment on that until I understand the entire plan. He's just taken one aspect of it, which is income tax.
Income tax, yes.
But I don't know what all of that means.
Now, PM, if I may come in there, these are the same persons who said in the first round of the budget debate, he said that any government, during the estimates of revenue and expenditure, he's on the record saying that if they become the government, they will have problems in raising revenue.
Right.
Now that is why I am explaining the growth in the economy and the revenue that became available. Because remember, when the Labour Party was in office between 2011 and 2016, they drew down on the reserves that we had, in excess of 200 million in reserve. They drew down on it. And the leader of the opposition, Philip J. Pierre, just said, well, that was a simple matter. Instead of borrowing the money, we had it there, we used it.
That's right.
And that is what caused them to reduce the debt. Now, think of it. They borrowed more than this government. They drew down on the cash reserves. And they still could not grow the economy. But here was his statement in the parliament. His statement was that the reason why we could not grow or the economy declined in the last year, 2019, prior to COVID, is because, and I have it written down, he said, it's because of mismanagement. Contraction of economy is a result of mismanagement. So in 1 year,
And let's get this thing right. A contraction of 3 million EC dollars.
3 million EC dollars. So remember, we got it at 560
million.
5 billion.
5 billion and 60 million.
Yeah.
We took it to 5 billion, 534 billion.
Yeah.
5 billion. 500 million. And it went down by 3 million in 1 year. And he says that is mismanagement.
Can you believe that?
And the 3 million it went down by, it was still so much higher. It is still 500 million higher
More than
what he
what
he left.
Yeah.
And he said that is mismanagement. Now,
So, you know, this is why it's a good point. And in my budget, what I did is I juxtaposed.
You did what?
I juxtaposed. I made a comparison.
Oh, okay.
Right? Of a situation. I said, imagine what we've been through with COVID. Imagine if we had COVID in 2015.
Oh boy. Somebody give an answer to that. I'm not even going to report what it is.
Okay?
Yesterday.
So what's interesting of that, Champagne, the revenue in the government had increased by $240 million from the time we came in on an annual basis. Okay? And our expenses had increased by $140 million. So we had
So you're saving 100 million.
we added another $100 million.
100 million, yeah.
Okay? With COVID in 2019, it dropped the revenue by 22%. Okay?
How much would that amounted to?
To $890 million. It dropped to. Okay? In 2015, the revenue was $900 million.
With no COVID.
With no COVID.
No COVID.
So it means that if they had COVID, they would have started at $900 million. So if you take a 22% reduction, because now you put COVID on top of it, it would have reduced the revenue now to $750 million or $720 million. Okay? And your expenses were virtually the same. Salaries are $540 million, which includes pensions. The debt management is $300 million. And basic operating cost of government was $400 million. So when we got COVID, we had increased the revenue to $1.something billion. Okay, there was a 20% decline. It brought it back to 900. Imagine if you started at 900 now and you contracted, and your expenses are the same. So he's there saying, "Oh, if that had happened, this is how he would have spent the money." Spend what money?
but there would be no money to spend.
No money to spend.
What he would do is have to cut. Would he have been able to make payroll? Highly unlikely. Would he have been able to continue paying the debt? Very unlikely. Because remember, one of the things that still, and I know it's a very difficult concept for the general public to understand, we issue bonds and treasury bills. We issue them for 90 days, 120 days, 6 months. We issue them for a year. We issue them for 2 years and 3 years. So every year, there's always bonds and treasury bills coming due.
Coming back, yeah.
And more often than not, pre-COVID, people agree to just roll over the bond, meaning that they just say, okay, leave the bond there.
Mm-hmm.
And so the government doesn't have to pay out the money.
Right.
25% of the bonds got redeemed. So we had $900 million in bonds becoming due.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to find $180 million of cash to pay down on those bonds.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine if we got to $900 million in revenue.
Right.
He would have been at $700 million in revenue. There's no way.
Yeah.
Plus, the confidence of the World Bank, IMF, CDB, ECCB had in us. I'm not so sure
They didn't have it in them.
that they would have been able to get the kind of money that we had access to.
No.
Right?
No.
So I say this to you because when we are trying to build reserves, when we are making some difficult decisions, it's because you don't know when the next COVID comes. You don't know when the next hurricane comes. So as a country, we have to do a better job of building up reserves to deal with these shortcomings.
Yes, sir.
And while we may not have built up reserves in terms of a sinking fund, we had built up reserves in cash, in earnings in the economy. And we had grown the economy to a particular size. So let's take the call centers. That's been a substantial increase. The investments we made in Ojo Labs and in the South allowed ITEL BPO to come in.
Yeah.
KM2, when we met with them, unbelievable company. Grow, a bunch of new companies came in and filled up this space. How do you think we brought the unemployment of youth unemployment from 44% to 31%?
Yeah.
Was that mechanism? So the fact is, juxtaposing or comparing or assuming if you had COVID in 2015 is a very good way for persons to appreciate what we were able to achieve from 2016 to 2019 that allowed us to feel the brunt of COVID. Have we suffered? Everybody has suffered.
Everyone did.
Okay? But the fact is, we've met salaries. We've paid our bills.
Yeah.
We've stayed open. Okay?
Yep.
And we've put ourselves in a position that as soon as the market opens up, we know we're going to get there. And what did we see? They keep talking about the debt to GDP. Right, Guy? The fact is that 3/4 of the increase in the debt to GDP from 66%, from 59% to 86%. 3/4 of that increase was because of the contraction in the GDP. The GDP contracted by 20%. So the $5.5 billion went down to $4.9 billion. Right?
Yep.
Unbelievable. But what the good news is a big part of that was because of the contraction in tourism. And so the moment you see tourism recover, your GDP number is going to go back
Yeah.
up.
Back up
And
to
we must
where it
never
was.
forget that contraction in tourism is as a result of the COVID.
Correct.
Everyone knows that.
And the reality is the investments that we're making now, and Guy and I were having a conversation about that earlier. The choice of income support by itself or capital investment is a very good discussion to have. So income support is very good because what it does, it allows a household to continue consuming. But capital investment allows for people to get income support because the people who are going to be employed, the truck drivers, the materials you're buying, all of that is creating income support in the marketplace. But at the end of the day, it becomes an investment. So what does it do? It now makes it easier for people to get to their homes. People are consuming less. You're creating more capacity in the country. Continuing with the airport project. As you now get out of the COVID, you have now added capacity. So you're able to achieve two things. One, provide income support, as well as an investment into your infrastructure in your country. So here's a good example. And again, if maybe you can help me with this one, Guy. Philip gave the example of the Rodney Bay Road.
Yeah, the expansion.
He wasn't using the right number, but let's say it's $15 million. Okay, which is what about it is.
Well, he said 20.
So he said 20,
Yeah.
but it's not.
It's not 20.
It's $20 million if you include the water pipes.
Okay.
So if people see the big blue pipes,
Yeah.
what those are to replace the existing water pipes
Right.
that were in there since 1976.
Yeah.
They're 14 inches. These ones are 20 inches.
20, yeah.
And the other ones are leaking like sieves. I mean, we always see them digging up. So what we did with the road work that's taken place, take advantage of the opportunity and put down new pipes. That's $4 million just for that.
Mr. Dembo was here a couple of Saturdays ago. He said we are losing billions of gallons of water as a result of those road
Correct.
pipes.
Okay. So he said, let's look at the $20 million. And he explained how would he spend.
How he would have
He
spent
said
that
he's going to
money.
give bus drivers this and
Right.
farmers that.
So I want to ask a question. When they supposedly made the decision to do the administrative building in View Fort, the unemployment rate was 25%. Youth unemployment was 44%. The economy had been contracting, and you and I know because you used to come campaigning with us. People were suffering.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? Why didn't they take the $62 million and give it to the people?
Exactly.
And the reason is they couldn't borrow the money. The entity that was borrowing the money and
Was the
spending the money
NIC.
was NIC. And the government was going to pay back NIC by agreeing to rent the office spaces from them.
For 15 years.
So they didn't have that money.
They couldn't borrow. Right? So what they did is they got NIC to borrow. DFC's direct finance contracts are under the same theory. We have reached the limit what we can borrow, Champagne. I can't borrow any more money from the banks. I've said that repeatedly.
Yes.
Okay, I've reached my statute of limitation.
Yeah.
Not statute, my limitations.
Ceiling.
My ceiling that I can
Yes.
borrow from them. Okay? And given the current economic situation and the uncertainty, other than the money that we have borrowed from the airport tax and the gas tax, I have no other place to borrow money. So the entities that are borrowing the money under the DFCs are the contractors. They're the ones who've gone to the bank and borrowed the money.
So they
And
didn't
they've
finance
borrowed-
contracts.
Right. And how do we pay them back? We're paying them back because we've agreed that every year a portion of the gas tax will go to repay them. So it's like a rent
Okay.
that you're paying them. Okay? So it's not my money. So it's not to say that the government of St. Lucia went out and borrowed $15 million. Had $15 million, and we said, okay, let's spend it on the
Let's
road.
spend it on the roads, yes.
So what we said is, okay, if we cannot borrow the money and we have this revenue stream, let the contractors borrow the money because at least now you're getting the capital investment. Are there people working on the road?
Yeah,
Are there trucks delivering materials?
every day.
Are there people buying materials from St. Lucia, rock and sand and all the other stuff? Okay, who's running the bitumen machines? All this is generating economic activity in St. Lucia. So it was a creative way of using longer-term fiscal space that we had to generate these jobs. But to say that we can control where the expenditure was going to be, we couldn't. We could only borrow money from persons who had the capacity to borrow money. The bank lent the contractor the money on the basis of what? That they were getting the contract from the government of St. Lucia, and that the government of St. Lucia was willing to commit the X number of dollars on an annual basis to pay back based on the $30 million.
Mr. Prime Minister, the way you have broken this thing down, especially with the road expansion up in all of St. Lucia, I was so pleased today. I know that they are happy the way you explained, because the Labour Party is making the St. Lucian people believe that you took $20 million and give it into Fresh Start to construct that road. And what you just said there about the construction companies are the ones going now to get that money, and then the government now pay them
Over a time
over
period.
a time period.
And guess what? They created jobs.
Yes, sir.
And the people get paid every fortnight. And it is these fortnightly payments and monthly payments that becomes the income support. Because if you look at the number of people who are working in hotels who lost their jobs, what they are doing now, some of them are in the construction industry. That is the type of income support. Because if you had to go and find the money by yourself, Where would you borrow it from?
Yeah.
Who would give you money to give to people?
So a great example is when people are bawling when we can't sell alcohol and the small shops are closed. Why are they bawling? Because they know there'll be people to come and buy. How do people have money to go and buy? They have the jobs. Now, look, I don't think that Guy, myself, or anybody in my party is going to say and look anybody in the eye in St. Lucia and say, this is
The
sufficient.
solution.
Okay? What we were trying to do is, somebody was asking me earlier tonight, how do you do it? I said, in a point of crisis, it's no different than you, like, sometimes you get to run with your eyes open. If all of a sudden you're asked to run with your eyes closed and a blindfold, you can't run as fast.
No.
You got to take little steps
You wouldn't get far.
and watch your way. With COVID, you can't run. So you got to take smaller steps to be able to make sure we can get through this period and try to spread the benefits as much as you possibly can, right? And put yourself in a position to be able to take off. And what am I comfortable in knowing? I know that we're on the right traction. That's what I wanted to say. COVID showed us that the changes that we're making are working. If we could make it through this worst crisis to the extent that we have, we're in great shape. With the vaccines coming in and reopening our borders, I mean, the number of people coming in at the airports is increasing. As the UK rolls out their vaccines, the US rolls out their vaccines, and hopefully we're also rolling out our vaccines, okay, we're going to see a recovery of the market. So it means that we're going to get that added benefit. So the banks have played their role in giving persons moratoriums. Nobody here is looking to bankrupt anybody or to put any unnecessary pressure on people. But the sad reality is this is the worst crisis of our time.
Oh, yeah.
And we're trying to just survive, right?
The entire world.
And we believe the fact that unemployment only jumped from 16.9%
To 21.
to 21%, right? Just 4.5% is unbelievable when you think of it, of what happened.
Yeah.
That your entire tourism industry
Collapsed.
was affected. By keeping the hotels, some of the hotels open, Champagne, 7,000 jobs.
And to add to what PM is saying there, one of the things we need, people are not where they used to be. So it is clear to us that the hotel workers are not making the salaries because a lot of their money was through the tips and the service charge, the gratuity, but they are not making it. But that is why we know that people are suffering. We know that these are difficult times, but we are in survival mode. We have to survive the worst part of this crisis. And with our vaccination and everything coming in place, it looks like this is getting to be behind us.
Right.
But one of the things that the members opposite kept on saying is making comparisons to other countries within CARICOM. So let me tell them, as an example, public debt to GDP. Barbados in 2019, it was 120.2%.
And that's after she had brought it down by 50 points.
Okay. Exactly.
Remember, because she went into an IMF program.
Preliminary numbers for 2020 is 144.4%.
Wow.
The only country with positive growth is Guyana, and is as a result of the oil. If you go to Jamaica...
Now let's say this, with Guyana, if Guyana had been in the oil business before, their revenue would have gone down.
Yes.
Like Trinidad. It's only because they never had oil before.
How did that happen?
Well, they didn't have oil. They only just discovered the oil. They just started dredging it. So they only now just got
So
the
it's
oil.
added value.
So it's added value.
Oh,
to the economy.
Whereas in Trinidad, because the price of oil dropped for a period of time, their revenue also dropped.
Right. Yeah.
So, and let me, because it's easy for them to come and manipulate numbers and tell you. So, Jamaica, it was 93.9% in 2019. Public debt to GDP went to 110%. Trinidad, with all of its manufacturing, all of its resources, and everything that they have at their disposal, they moved from 65.2% public debt to GDP to 80.9%. So when you look at the management in St. Lucia, I can tell you, given all of the constraints that we have, we've done, this Prime Minister has done remarkably well in weathering the storm of COVID. And unlike what the Labour Party is trying to present, they are all we have to do is compare their 5 years with our 5 years. And if we leave out the year of COVID, and that's why what he's saying is important. So unemployment under the Labour Party without COVID was at 25%, 24.9 rounding off to 25. Youth unemployment was up to 44%. Under a United Workers' Party government, even with COVID, because the Prime Minister had done such a good job and the government had done an overall good job in bringing unemployment down to 16.8%. The increase in unemployment as a result of COVID took us to 21, rounding off to 22%. Is still less than Labour Party. And youth unemployment, I think, would be in the range of the 40% or thereabout. Which means that youth unemployment with COVID is better under this UWP government than it was on the Labour Party. And I tell people, and if you go back to the numbers, the performance of the economy with COVID is as good as it was in terms of tax revenues, PM, as it was under the Labour Party with no COVID. And it ranges, there may be a few million here and there difference. But if we are able to manage with COVID and allow the economy to be almost on par with the Labour Party during the time of no COVID, it is clear that the comparison that the PM made, and I heard Philip J. Pierre talk about, he would have taken, you must first have money to be able to spend it. And I've been asking them, and I was asking them to play the video. I wanted to ask the PM, is there a different IMF? Because it was this Labour Party that is there who told us at the meeting in Marsha. And it could not be that Philip J. Pierre is not aware, because it's opposite his constituency office. The meeting was held, which said that the IMF had told the Labour Party government they need to cut public servant salaries by 10%. Now that was, remember Dr. Anthony said something happened that had never happened before, that they could not raise money. They were asked to put their financial house in order. And part of putting their financial house in order was to cut public servant salaries by 10%.
Without COVID.
Without COVID.
That's right.
Just Labour Party. Under the Stevenson King-led administration, we gave 14.5% increase, which the Labour Party helped them match to get. Yet still, when they came in, they wanted to cut by 5%. And they actually came to Parliament, you know, I can show you the books to back up what we are saying. Since the
with no consultation.
No consult. Since the UWP has been in government, even with COVID, this Prime Minister has been able to manage the economy. And every single month, in fact, I spoke to the Accountant General today, and he was telling me the first 2 months in April is looking good in terms of projected revenue, not anywhere close to where we used to be, because we understand the constraints. So the appeal to the people of St. Lucia is to, you can listen to the bluff of the other side if you want to.
Remember, those were the same people that offered you what?
100 million immediately.
Jobs.
Better days.
Better days, 100 million immediately.
Okay? And that is the style of the Labour Party, is to offer things that are very difficult to define, sound nice, but when you start getting into the detail of it, it's a very different thing. And that's why I'm very glad that Guy read out our manifesto. Our manifesto has been and will continue to have specifics. So
I wanted to ask you a question, Mr. Prime Minister. What made you so persistent in keeping St. Lucia open during some periods of COVID-19, and to bring about the infrastructure regarding construction, because that kept St. Lucia afloat slightly? What made you so persistent in doing that?
Exactly what I just saw on BBC last night, which was a report on Brazil. Right? And people who have lost their jobs. The government itself doesn't have any money to provide any income support, and they're just by themselves. It was unrealistic to believe that the government, with the loss of revenue that we had, and the cost, the commitments that we had on salaries, the commitments we had on debt, and the obligation to pay off some of our bondholders, because it would be a catastrophe if we didn't. Okay? It would be like, I mean, I don't want to make comparisons, but Antigua has found themselves in that position where they have not paid their Paris debt. And they can't get any extra money. That's why they've not gotten any money from IMF, because they would have to literally go to a restructuring program to do that. So understanding what the capacity of the country was and understanding the need of the people, we cannot afford to shut down. And once I understood the concept of coexisting with COVID, I'd say, wait a second, you mean to tell me if we wear our face mask, if we hand sanitize, we do social distancing, that we can survive? And the motivation was whom? Taiwan. 25 million people were doing it. Now, they had the benefit of SARS. So it was much easier for people to... I think if there was another virus, people would adapt much quicker here in St. Lucia. We didn't have the benefit of that. But guess what? The idea that you could, that possibility was worth to push the envelope to make sure that people could stay in their jobs. So when all the hotels closed down, 14,000 people went home.
That is a lot of people.
Again, understanding the psychology of people. And this is why I'm so grateful to the banks and also to the credit unions. Was a lot of discussions. Historically, when we've had a crisis like this, the banks give a moratorium, but on an individual basis. So that means that you would have been laid off, right, Champagne, and you said, okay, I have to call the bank to get my mortgage. How many people, 14,000 hotel workers, and everybody else now who had taxis, all the people who had buses, all the people that were in the tour business, so you're talking about close to 20,000 people.
A lot of people.
Who all of a sudden would have gone into what? Panic. Households where you may have had a civil servant and a person working in tourism in the same household. And the loan that they had was on the basis of both of their incomes.
That's right.
Correct?
Now it becomes one.
Now it becomes even a bigger number, right, Champagne? And I said to the banks, when the announcement comes about the closure, which it will come, right, because you could see where the world was going, if you do not give a standard moratorium, it's going to be chaos. So I think that when it closed and simultaneously the announcement was made, there's a moratorium. People had to hear it a couple of times for them to really appreciate that. But let me tell you, that took a lot of anxiety away. So there was not that immediate depression. As time went on, and we were now able to reopen, and some people were able to get their jobs back, to Guy's point, not your full salary, because you got your basic salary. The gratuity certainly would not have been the same as it was before. But guess what? There was income coming in to buy food and to keep basic things going. The government then also understood, how do we now make up the shortfall of the other 7,000 people employed in the industry that we cannot, who are not going to get hired back right away? So take Cocoa Palm. Cocoa Palm's been closed. Because how are you going to get guests to go and stay there and only stay on that property? So there are some properties that's impossible for them to be able to open back up. The bigger all-inclusive properties and the properties that have more facilities on their property would be easier because of the product that we had. So how are you going to make up that? Was construction. I don't have money, but we have these loans that are already approved. Let's now expedite those loans, get these things going as fast as possible so people can get employed.
Right.
We then, Invest and Lucia had done an amazing job when we had brought Ojo here. They then had a trip where they brought some of the top companies down to St. Lucia, call center businesses. And those some companies were invested in Jamaica. And when Jamaica ended up having the outbreak in the call centers and shut down the call centers, these guys panicked and they realized they needed to diversify. They had already been to St. Lucia. They knew of the success of Ojo. They knew the facilities we had. So within weeks, ITEL BPO was here.
Right.
Within weeks, KM2 was expanding. Okay, so all of a sudden, that became another 1,500 to 2,000 jobs that we were able to add on to the market. Now, what we don't appreciate sometimes is those jobs also generate jobs. So what do I mean? Between ITEL BPO and Ojo Labs, $4.5 million in salaries. So they're going back home and they're buying things. They go to the little grocery store. They go over here. They go over there. And those little businesses now can
they have a kid. They now have to pay somebody to watch that kid. So the person who was unemployed, it's not a big salary they would be getting, but they now can get some basic income to help themselves.
Remember, in those companies, it was anywhere between $2,500 and $4,000. And that business was growing globally. And the fact is, if the United States introduces the $15 minimum wage, we believe that that business is going to just exponentially explode. And we're in a good position. Today at Cabinet, how do we help now the persons who are working on the cruise industry? We've agreed with the cruise industry that we're going to vaccinate them. Because the cruise industry is requiring persons to be vaccinated to go back and work on the ships.
Full vaccination, both doses.
Both doses.
Yeah.
So we've agreed we'll do that for free. Whatever certification they're missing, so if they need their health certificate or if they need the maritime certificate, the government is going to assist them in getting those things. And we're working with and directly with the cruise industry to get as many of them who want to get back onto the ships as possible. So all we're doing right now is push jobs. Okay? Get as many people employed as possible. And if we can make investments along the way that both increases the capacity of the country and generates job, that's the win-win situation.
And PM, permit me to just come in there and say, even if these people going on the cruise ships would not be there to vote for us, because this is not about the vote. This is about the economy of households. This is about the benefit. This is about, you know how many of these young people from my constituency who are employed on the cruise ship, who had started building their homes, they were at advanced stages in planning and organizing their life. And all of a sudden that happens. We are doing whatever we can to get these people back into employment. Even if it means they're not there to vote for us. That does not matter. What matters the most is that the money they are sending back home to their family to support their households and all of the other things. And I want to say this, PM touched on the issue of the call centers. I heard a talk show today where the person was saying, the PM said as if that's the first time there are call centers in St. Louis. PM was very clear that we never had call centers in Vieux-Fort. He was very clear. And now you have Vieux-Fort rivaling Castries with call centers and the number of employees. So when you look at what is happening, and I can tell you, there are young people from Castries who are now traveling down to Viewfort to work at call centers.
A lot of people.
In fact, a young lady told me working at Ojo Labs was just a different experience. The quality, the kitchen, the treatment of the staff, the atmosphere. And now, these call centers have now allowed a lot of these people to work from home. So some of them, they go down there for 2 weeks, they get the training, they do the necessaries, and they're in the north, but they're working for the call center in the south. And over the years, from the time the PM became Prime Minister, he focused on the need to grow economic activity in the south. Now, I tell people, this is not too difficult to understand. You had a free-time Prime Minister from the south. Where are the jobs that he created in the south? This Prime Minister has created more jobs in the south in one term in office than the Labour Party created in 3 terms. And I challenge anybody to prove otherwise.
You realize he did not make mention of one single community in his budget address or his speech, the former Prime Minister. He did not name one single community of what he did in that community in Beaufort South.
Champagne, I think we might have to take some calls.
I wanted to go somewhere with you, Mr. Prime Minister.
If I can just say this,
before we open the
Champagne.
lines.
I want persons to sit back for a moment and come on a little journey with me.
Yeah.
And I call it the changing the face of the South. Okay? Think of the Wasco building and what that looks like. Think of the new international airport. Think of Beau Saint-Jou that was just really growing ticks.
Yeah.
Okay? And now you have a world-class horse racing track which remains open and poised for takeoff. Okay? Think of now going up to Grayson, the water intake that you're going to have there. Think of now the new St. Jude's Hospital, which is an international standard hospital. And the new road systems we're putting in there, the Sandy Beach development. And then very soon we're looking to break ground on the cruise ship terminal in the south. Just think of that and how that changes the South. Buildings that were abandoned for almost 26 years in the free zone, now modernized with over 1,500 kids now and soon to be 2,000 young people working in those places. All right? That is the level of transformation that's taking place in the South. Now, I heard this thing about the Belrose Doctrine.
Yeah.
Okay? And you were there last night.
I was there, yeah.
And what did I say? The Belrose Doctrine is not about what they are saying it is. The Belrose Doctrine is about rescuing Castries East.
That's what it's about.
It's about a young woman who I have a great admiration for. She's the most genuine person, right? She speaks from her heart. She's not a typical politician, but she's a lady who was a PS and has been in community development and sports development her whole life. This is what she wants to do. She's bought into now and created her doctrine to understand that it's through Castries' growth that Castries East will grow. This minister is going to be the most influential person to change Castries East because Castries East is a residential area. And there are too many residential areas in Castries East which remain unformalized, as informalized. They don't have the necessary services. Somebody has to go in and work with those persons to say, not all of you can live in this particular physical area. We have to upgrade this area because it's an injustice. Now, let's understand what has taken place. My government wins, the government. We have a very clear policy position and a different methodology to get things done. If we started village tourism and community development in Marcia, you really believe that Philip Pierre would have stood by idly and would have supported that?
No.
He's fought us on international, on national issues. Okay? So what we have to do, and what I've learned in St. Lucia, St. Lucians need to see an example. When I started the Jazz Festival, I can go through a litany of things that people fought me on initially, and then when they saw it, they go, oh, okay. So doing what we've done in Soufriere, doing what we've done in Dennery South, doing what we're doing in Anse-le-Ray, doing what we're doing up in Gros-Islet, okay? What we're doing now in Choiseul, and Vieux Fort, right? Remember, in Vieux Fort is capital investment projects, not necessarily community projects yet. So what we want everybody to do is to be able to buy into this. So when we now come to you, okay, regardless of whether it is a constituency that has a representative from the opposite side, that there's going to be buy-in.
And that needs to be explained to the people, particularly down in Vieux Fort, the capital projects as opposed to the community projects, because you hear a lot of talk about that. Oh, there's nothing happening, small projects going on in Vieux Fort South. Now that has to be explained, because a lot of people are not recognizing what is happening in regards to capital projects as opposed to community projects.
So the big change is what we're doing is we believe in local government. So you're going to see a transformation taking place with the Castries City Council. We've experimented because no money was being given to the local government. So we started with 100,000. You're not going to believe me what I'm going to tell you.
100,000.
100,000. And it's taken the Accountant General's office 3 years. 3 years to work with them to get an accounting system which they would accept. Ministers here. What was happening is they were not getting the money because they didn't agree with how the accounting systems were run, and they would get the money at the last quarter. They couldn't spend the money. They had to give the money back. Let me tell you some champagne. Painful. So we're now getting to the process that everybody understands, and what we want to do is, even with property tax, is a large portion of the new property tax will go to local government. And property tax, in our mind, that's why we've not had it for 5 years, while we've restructured it, cannot be based on the value of the land. So I go and build in a housing area, the housing area develops, unknowns to me, all of a sudden property prices go up and my property taxes go up. We're saying no, property taxes have to be based on services. I see that they're collecting the garbage. I see that the street lights are working. I see that there's bus shelters. I see that there's schools in the area. All those are the things that add value to your property.
Right.
And it's on the basis of that and the size of the lot you have. But once you start paying the property taxes, which will be a smaller amount of money, and it's an absolute dollar amount, so it's capped. That part of that money, over half of that money, will now go into the town council, in order to, again, continue to support the development. And that's where the community development projects are going to be coming from.
Well, your friend said he's going to eliminate it altogether. Philip Pierre said he's going to take off property tax.
As I said to you, whenever somebody is putting together a proposal, if they're going to do it in piecemeal, you have to wait until you hear it's an entirety before you're going to pass any comment on. I listen to it. I know it's an election year and people say things that they...
And like you said earlier, we also heard of jobs. We also heard of better days, and we heard of $100 million.
The record is
the records are there to show.
The record is there that even without this UWP government promising, we promised no property tax for the first 3 years. We've given no property tax for the 5-year term of this government.
That is right.
So, what the leader of the opposition has presented does not change people's circumstances as of today. Because the fact, and he said property tax, he did not indicate whether it's corporate, commercial, personal. So you see, it's just, I tell you, I don't expect PM to say this, but I can say it. These are reckless political gimmick statements by the Labour Party. As 100 million immediately. And when they came in, they tried to give you a different definition for immediately. So,
and just to your point, right, just on the property tax, our property tax would again be part of that social net. So persons who are living in homes are earning an income level below a certain amount, or elderly people with pensions of a limited amount are not going to pay property
They're not
tax.
going to pay property.
Right? But the fact is, all of us have to make the same kind of contribution. Government has to generate revenue. What our government believes is in a fair tax that's easy to calculate and transparent, and that persons can see where the money is going. So a property tax is about putting it into local government where you can see the services being transmitted to you.
Yeah.
Right?
So let me show you the flaws in what is presented. And that's when people don't learn. The Labour Party in government had people measure in people's houses in all the rural communities. And that is why when we came in as UWP, we said no. We gave that commitment long beforehand. That look at, not on the eve of an election to try and get momentum swing, because there was a clear plan as to how we were going to grow the economy, what we were going to do. So anybody can promise anything.
Anybody.
It's in whether they can deliver what they have promised. And that is why I showed the two things that the Prime Minister gave, or a few of the things he gave commitments on, that he reached very close to accomplishing. Some we actually accomplished. And that is not pie in the sky representation. That is a real representation. So coming to terms with what, and I will come to this because on the issue of the CXCs, and people are saying, so why would you go and pay CXC for a corporate bank manager who has one child, but you're going to pay maths and English for that child because you cannot discriminate? But the parent who could not afford to pay for the 4 subjects for the child or for the 5 subjects still cannot pay. You see, now that is where
doesn't make sense.
All of us.
I've been trying to figure it out.
So why don't you say, okay.
It makes sense to help the people that need the help.
Exactly.
So families, again, that are vulnerable, the single mothers, the people that are not employed, they shouldn't pay any CXCs.
Single out those people,
Because these education, healthcare, and security need to be available to everyone, right? But if you can afford, pay. If you cannot afford, then the state will pay for you. And that's this social net program that we want to make. I want to add one thing. I laugh, because sometimes there's always a simpler way to say things. So the Labour Party is in a habit right now to say that we fired the nice workers. So I want to put on record, the United Workers Party made the nice program nicer.
I believe that.
Okay, how did we do that? So it's not about just talk. We ended up putting more of the money into the home care program, right? So we have more persons now helping, because that was a fantastic program.
Yes, you always say that. Okay. And you have said it as well.
Fantastic program, right? And the remaining amount of money, instead of going to permanent salaries, went into the NAP program to pay partial salaries on businesses who were hiring the people. And so that basically we incentivized the business to hire the people, gave them a period of time that they could be trained, and then now they've stayed on as permanent jobs. And that has worked, whether it's on the cruise industry or in the call centers or in other private businesses in the manufacturing sector. The next one that is a fallacy, right, is the laptop program. Guess what? We took the laptop program, one laptop per child, and we made it better. Because we gave 8,000 kids laptops. More importantly, the laptop included the software that is your books.
And so Wi-Fi.
Right, so the parents were paying $1,200 a year, $800 to $1,200 a year. Eventually, it's only going to cost them $350. But for this year, we paid it. So your child's getting the laptop, which gives them full access to all the different internets. And that laptop now has all of your books downloaded in with all the links and the software program to support it. Plus, to the minister said, 4,000 of those came with MiFis. What's a MiFi? It's a device that plugs in that allows them to get access to the internet anywhere in St. Lucia. Right? So for those persons who come from households in which maybe they don't have the access. And this minister also
targeted.
He did the most brilliant program
Right.
to force the networks, what do you call them, Digicel as
And
well
Flow.
as Flow, to provide a program where persons can get only local TV.
Okay.
Okay? At
A local package.
They
a
got-
local
yeah,
package.
yeah.
They don't get CNN and everything else,
Right.
but they get all
They get the
of
local
the local
programs.
programs.
Yes, yes.
Included in that is also Wi-Fi. So again, if somebody comes over, that in that household now they have Wi-Fi included in that price.
Yeah.
I can tell you, when we go to the households, you either have TV or you don't.
Yeah. And the
Because
Labour Party laptops, what was in there? No programs, right?
no programs,
Just
that's what
a
I'm saying to
simple
you.
laptop.
Just a simple laptop.
Simple laptop.
So that's what I'm saying to you. We need nicer. Nicer.
Nice.
Okay? And
laptop
we took the
program.
laptop program and we made it much better.
Yeah.
And those are real. These are not just slogans or taglines. This is real. That's what this government has been. Never ashamed to say if there's something good, we're built upon.
Yeah.
And that's why I was so upset. You know, when somebody wants to make the allegation, to make the comparison between Sir John
Yeah, and
and,
Philip.
and Philip here.
That was on
To
the-
say that Sir John didn't do anything in his constituency. Champagne, that is absurd.
It is absurd.
I can tell you the work that I have been achieving in the constituency has been on building back what Sir John started. The feeder roads, the main
The
roads.
most
the wharf.
extensive road network
yeah.
for farmers in
That is
St.
true.
Lucia
Without a doubt.
is in Mikudnof and
Without a
South.
doubt.
I can tell you that. I have
Unbelievable.
Without a
driven
doubt.
these roads.
I have
That's
been
like
through some of
another St.
Oh, yeah,
Lucia
yeah.
altogether.
You know,
That's true.
I sit there sometimes, okay, and imagine in 1964
Yeah.
or 1955 what Sir John faced. 2 secondary schools. Water distribution was literally in the Castries Basin area. Okay, courthouses, police stations, institutions. He transformed this country.
He did.
Now, not only did he fix up his own constituency, and guess what? He allowed the people in the constituency to earn their own income. You think the term green gold
Yeah.
just invented
No,
itself?
no, it did
Come
not.
and see the houses in the constituency. Come and see what people have done for themselves. Now, the problem is, once Bananas died, Viewfort also died. Because Choiseul and Labrie and
We're
the two
going into
Micous,
Viewfort
it was
to
the
shop.
money from agriculture
right.
that they were using
Going in
to
there.
go into
Yeah.
to Viewfort. What has to
And
happen?
when did that happen? That happened between 95, 97, after the 97 elections. It impacted the banana industry very negatively. And that is where, and that's why I explained earlier what happened to the banana industry. Because the Labour Party would destroy anything in St. Lucia to get into elective office.
Yeah.
And that is why the reputation and the well-being and the good standing of St. Lucia is of no value to them. All they are determined to do is to get into political office.
Yeah.
I
Now-
don't think that the callers will excuse
Now we have
us if-
10:30, so we're going up to 11, gentlemen. We could go up to 11 o'clock. we'll do half
and
an hour.
we want callers as much as possible, since we have the PM here, not to give us long speeches but to get straight to the point and ask a question or make a quick comment so that we can.
All right,
try and
so our
accommodate
numbers are
as many persons.
456-0931 or 485-0931. And then we have our first call. Beautiful evening to you. Hello.
Yes, good evening, Champagne.
Good evening, sir.
Honorable PM, good evening, and Honorable Guy, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Okay, one question to the PM. And Mr. PM, has it ever crossed your mind to include the people in the diaspora and overseas to vote in this coming election? Although I know it is soon, but what can you do now to allow the majority of people that want to vote overseas in our elections? Thank you.
I'm gonna apologize, caller, but I'm gonna have Champagne re-ask me the question because my earphones were not.
He was asking what could be done to get people in the diaspora
Absentee
to
ballots.
vote in this upcoming election.
Yeah.
Come home.
Yeah. And someone called me
At this
morning.
point, come home. I know that there's definitely, when we're going to be looking at constitutional review, and hopefully solutions will give our party the mandate of looking at seriously at constitutional review.
Champagne.
Hold on 1 minute, caller.
That we can look at the possibility, and I certainly support the idea of the diaspora being able to vote at offices overseas.
All right. Thanks for holding, caller. Good evening.
Good evening, Champagne. Good evening, Mr. Minister. Good evening, Mr. Prime Minister.
Good evening.
No, sir.
Yeah, I've been always listening to you. I'm a first-time caller here.
Oh, beautiful. You need the bell.
You said something, Mr. Prime Minister, about the cruise ship, and I'm really happy with you because we've been home because I'm a cruise ship worker myself. Okay. And we've been home for the last year and no income and nothing, and this would be really nice if we could get help with renewing our medical certificates and those kind of stuff. So kudos on that.
So we're going to be doing it through the NAP, the NAP program. We really made that decision today in Cabinet. So again, we would give you the vaccines. We will help you in terms of getting your certification done.
Good. And just keep on doing the good work and let's not mind all those useless noises that the opposition make.
Yes, it is indeed useless noises.
We're on the right track with everything that's going on in this country, looking at COVID and everything.
All right. Thank
well, you know,
lot,
we have three cruise ship companies now that have committed to St. Lucia. Starting in June. So again, I want to thank the Minister of Tourism and his team for an amazing job and the relationship they have with the cruise industry.
Oh, beautiful. Special good evening to you. Hello.
Good night, Champion.
And good night to you, sir. Keep it short, caller.
First time caller.
My brother, how are you?
No bell for you. No bell for you.
Good night, Baradil Conway, Darren Road. Good night, Emily Statesman. Good night to you, Mr. Joseph.
Good night.
Mr. Joseph, and the greatest and the best Prime Minister on the planet. Mr. Prime Minister, I want to remind the people of St. Lucia that before COVID, you were interviewed, or a little after COVID, you were interviewed by, I think, TV3 or something like that in Trinidad. And they asked you about, you were ahead of the clock. And the question they asked you, they want to know how come you took the bull by the horn and went ahead of the clock, and you explained it to them. You were the only leader in the Caribbean that was ahead of the clock. And the same interviewer chastised other leaders from the Caribbean, Barbados, Jamaica, Antigua, all those guys was chastised by the same moderator interviewer. Well, why didn't you follow your steps? Not only that, you even went further and you put lending agencies in the Caribbean on standby. What's going to happen? Because this thing's going to hit. If this thing hits in the Caribbean, that you wanted to do this and do that and do the next.
All right, you have 30 seconds, caller.
One more thing. The IMF that turned down Kenny Arrogant Anthony, didn't turn you down. They sent back Kenny home and tell him to get his house in order. They sent you home too. And you got your house in order and went back and you got the loans.
That's right.
I want the people to know that you are the greatest and you're the best on the planet.
Amen.
Have a good night.
All right, thanks a lot, caller. Hello, good evening. Thanks for holding. Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening to you.
Good evening, Mr. Prime Minister.
Good evening, ma'am.
And Mr. Minister.
Good evening.
Hello? Hello, good evening.
Hello?
Yes, we're here. Oh, I lost my caller.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
We can
Yes,
go
we
ahead.
can hear you. You can go ahead.
Oh, hi. Hello, Mr. Prime Minister. I just have a quick question. When do we take the COVID vaccine? Do we still have to quarantine when we come to St. Lucia?
So that decision is being made. We're hoping to get to some kind of herd immunity. Right now, the CMO's office has indicated that once we can get to 70%, then that's going to certainly allow us to open up the economy much more. So we're still waiting for some information from PAHO and the WHO and CARFA, but that certainly would be our intention.
Okay. And another thing, we don't know when elections gonna be.
No,
I know they're going to be this year.
Caller, you're trying a quick job on us. You're trying a quick one on us, caller.
No. You know me, Champagne. I keep calling and ask you.
Yeah. I would like to know myself, caller. I would like to know myself.
I bought my 2 tickets. I know for sure I'm coming down in July, but I need to know for elections. So
let's just hope it's calling July.
Vacation.
Well, let's just hope it's calling July, caller. We don't know that. All right? All right. Have a good evening, caller. Thanks for calling. Special good evening to you. Hello?
Hello, Champagne?
Yes, sir. Good night.
I'm calling from the south.
Yes.
I'm calling from the southeast community.
Yeah, I have the Prime Minister, Mr. Joseph here.
Yeah, I'm calling from the southeast community. After the election.
Caller, I can hear you, but you have not...
Okay.
You need to...
Caller, you're listening to your radio. Just speak to us.
Stop listening to the device and just speak with the phone.
Okay,
yeah.
All we need there, we need a little police station and a little facility for the ambulance. South is getting too populated.
Yeah, definitely. I am already working on an ambulance. I have somebody in Canada who's working on getting an ambulance that we are going to place with the Constituency Council, and that's what PM was talking about, local government. The police station will have to come later, but I expect maybe even before the end of this term that I can announce when the ambulance will arrive in St. Lucia for Castries South.
All right.
Good. But my boss, you know who is speaking to? I met you on something bad.
Okay.
All right, caller.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
have a good one. We have a lot of international calls tonight. Hello, good evening. Thanks for holding. Hello? Good evening. All right, so this one, we're going to take the other one. Hello, good evening. Hello? Good evening, sir.
Hello, good night.
Yes, sir.
Good night, PM. Honorable PM, good night, and Guy Joseph, good night.
Good night, sir.
Also, Champagne.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Honorable PM, I have so many questions to ask.
Yeah, I'll give you 2 minutes, sir, caller. Just 2 minutes. Yes.
Now, Honorable Guy, I think I have texted you and also the PM about not having transportation to leave the Virgin Islands to St. It is so hectic for us when we have to travel to Miami and from before. Is there any way or anything that you can do in your powers to help us in getting a bus way to go home, direct from St. Croix to St. Croix?
You want to repeat that, caller? You broke up a little bit.
So we are working with Inter-Caribbean. And, you know, obviously things are very difficult right now because of the protocols that are existing in the other OECS countries. So I'm really hoping that within the next couple of months that we will see some of those services start up. There are a lot of companies that want to start, but sadly, given the protocols, there just isn't enough amount of business even to do regular services to Barbados or Trinidad. So it's going to be very difficult at this point, but I know that there is a number of companies that want to recommence services, which will include the U.S. Virgin Islands.
All right.
Yes, and we had already started discussions with Inter-Caribbean Airlines on this.
Thanks for holding, caller. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening to you.
How you doing? How you doing, Mr. Prime Minister?
Great, thank you.
Mr. Joseph, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Very interesting show tonight.
Thank you.
I'd like to touch on when you started about the bananas and Pat Joseph. If any St. Lucian tonight. I know they have a way they always say that you're lying and you're lying. That topic you took there with Pat Joseph, I recall clearly that this man had an interview on NTN. And he said that after he helped Kenny ruin the banana industry, Kenny Anthony fired him over a telephone call he made to Kenny Anthony. So you ain't lying there yet. That is true.
But the minister didn't say about ruin the banana industry. He didn't say that. Huh? You say that
no,
Pat
I'm
Joseph
telling
said
you,
that.
SLP ruined the banana industry. And Pat Joseph gave that interview saying that he worked so hard with Kenny Anthony and they destroyed that industry when Kenny came into power. And he said what hurt him more is the fact that Kenny Anthony fired him, Pat Joseph, over a telephone call that Pat Joseph called Kenny, and Kenny fired him over that telephone call. And he said that hurt him so much that Kenny didn't even pick that call to call him and tell him that you were fired. He called Kenny, and Kenny fired him. I remember that clearly. So you were right there. Okay. Next thing, Mr. Prime Minister, I applaud you. I applaud you. I applaud you. I tell you, thank you again for your service to St. Lucia. And I know it will continue. It was nice seeing that you handled that country with wisdom. You had a plan. You came in with that plan. And you executed that plan well. You deserve an applaud and you deserve a medal.
So I should ring the bell again, caller?
I don't know. It's up to you, Champagne.
No. If you're making that beautiful comment, I should ring the bell.
Or blow the trumpet. I don't even want a bell again. I need a trumpet.
Well, boy, I might have to bring the band boys up there. All right, caller.
Mr. Prime Minister, I am a proud St. Lucian. And there's nothing more that hurt me when SLP was in power there in 2011 and the amount of scandal that St. Lucia was surrounded with. We actually ended up on the international news. And I tell you, I'm a patriotic St. Lucian, and that used to hurt me. It used to pain me like as if I am in the hospital giving birth to a child. You will not know that because you are male.
I'll give you another minute, caller.
It was nice. I am telling you, a nice feeling. I have friends overseas that are calling us and telling us how good you are doing. We are on the news, and things are happening well. Another thing, don't worry with the Labour Party. We are in an election yet. Like I told Dr. Secret earlier on, all the hierarchies of the Labour Party, those that below them, those that have the education, the understanding, they know very well that you are on point, that you are going places with St. Lucia, you are going to take St. Lucia where we're supposed to be. They know it very well, because hence the reason they're using the last card, which is the racist card, on St. Lucian to see whether or not they could knock you out. But you are covered under the blood. I'm telling you that because I pray for you every night, every single day I am walking, I am praying. I even dream of you.
10 seconds, caller.
You're going to get there, and you're going to get there, and we are going to see to it that you remain where you are there.
Amen.
So that you can continue in all that hard time, continue to bring St. Lucia out to the open so that everybody could know us the way we used to be.
All right.
Have a good
Thanks
night.
a lot, caller.
Amen.
Thank you very much. Beautiful evening to you. Hello? 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 All right, so we lost this one. Beautiful evening to you. Hello?
Yes, good evening, Champagne. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, sir. What about you?
I'm doing fine. I called you earlier.
The Prime Minister is here. You did not even greet the Prime Minister and the Honorable Guy Joseph.
Yeah, actually, I'm coming to the Prime Minister. Mr. Prime Minister, good evening. And Mr. Guy Joseph, good evening to both of you.
Good evening.
Yeah, I was telling I called earlier today, and then I was asking about the election thing for those of us who are overseas, you know. So I have already heard your answer to this. But I also want to let you know that I was one of those directors under St. Lucia Banana Corporation from 2000 to 2004, prior to my departure into the U.S. And I'm happy to know that you have not given up on the banana industry yet, and then you're still talking about trying to get things going for the farmers. I also wanted to let you know that I did spoke to Champagne earlier today about the road that you're expanding in the north of St. Lucia. That I think this is a very, very good idea, and very happy that you have taken that up. But also, I told him about that piece of road from the beach roundabout all the way up, going up north, which is really done badly. And then I'm hoping that you see the need to expand on that piece of road and try to build it properly, because as it stands now, it is really not a good piece of road at all in St. Lucia,
Oh, he's talking about from the VG roundabout to the shop roundabout.
I guess the two
talking
lane,
about the size.
the narrowness of,
Yes.
of the two lanes.
Yes. All right, caller?
Right. Yes,
Okay.
sir. And so I'm praying for you, Mr. Prime Minister. I am very, very proud of you. I know you are doing a very good job for St. Lucia. You have a really good vision. Please don't let anybody deter you from whatever you are doing now. Just keep on going and know that we are there supporting you. Like I told Champagne, I'm planning to be in St. Lucia in July. I'm hoping that the election is not going to be before that time, so I could have a chance to...
Yeah, you want thousands, thousands of solutions. All right, caller, thanks a lot. I'm going to let you know when the bell is rung, okay?
Yes, sir, thank you, sir.
All right, have a good evening. Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Prime Minister.
Good evening.
Good evening, Guy Joseph.
Good
Mr. Guy
evening.
Joseph. Good evening, Champagne.
Hello, good night.
Yes, I just want to tell the Prime Minister he's doing a good job. And Mr. Guy Joseph, I admire you because I think you're our lawyer in the UWP government. And I admire you for that because outspoken, and you'll say whatever you have to say.
That's right.
And you have your proof.
That's right.
Yes, so we're going for another 5 years again.
Yes.
And more.
That's
So
right.
this time, I know we're in an election year, although things is a little slow. And what I like the Prime Minister to do, since I live up in Martinique, like we want a port in Vieux-Fort. I from the south, so express days you can come Vieux-Fort one day too.
That's
We
right.
agree.
I agree with that.
We
caller.
agree. Both the Vieux-Fort and Soufrière.
Yes, I ring the bell on that. Yes.
And then we're going for 13-4.
13-4, that's all, caller?
Yeah, we give
All
them
right.
4.
You're giving them 4. All right, caller.
All right.
All right, thanks a lot.
Yes.
Have a beautiful
Bye-bye.
evening. All right, bye. Thanks for holding. Good evening. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Good evening.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead, caller. We can hear you.
Good evening to you, Mr. Champagne,
Good evening to you. Thank you.
and the Prime Minister.
Good evening.
Good evening to the Prime Minister and Mr. Guy Joseph.
Good night.
What I want to say tonight, always watching the show, but tonight, I call tonight.
No, no.
Okay.
I'm very, very proud of my Prime Minister. Mr. Guy Joseph, I wish I was in your constituency. The Prime Minister, I had a dream. After Sir John died, I had a dream. And if I have to say about a dream, I will not say it over
On the air.
over the year. After I had that dream with Sir John when he passed away, I had a dream with the Prime Minister. And the last election, he won the election. And I told people he was going to win the election. And all how I look at the dream I seen is Sir John that put the Prime Minister there. And he going to win the next election.
because he has worked for us.
All right,
He
caller.
has worked for us. And I'm very, very proud of him. And I'm praying for him.
Okay, caller, thank you. Where you calling
People,
from?
when you put a prime minister there, you did not put the prime minister there to give people money. He's working for the country.
That's right.
And I'm somebody, I always say I do not vote for man, I vote for party. And I want to see St. Lucia develop.
All right, thanks a lot.
I am
caller.
a friend.
Hello? Hello? Oh, I think I lost my caller. Hello, good evening. Sorry about that,
Hello.
caller. I think I lost you.
Good
Yes.
evening, Champagne. How you doing?
I'm doing good, sir. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Prime Minister. Good evening, Honorable Guy Joseph.
Good evening.
This is Ian Coljon. I'm listening to you from all the
From where?
Delaware, USA.
Oh, Delaware, USA. All right, go ahead.
Mr. Biden's country, man.
Yeah, this is Ian Coljon.
I know, Ian. How are you? I say that's where President Biden's from, Delaware.
That's right. I'm listening to you, Mr. Prime Minister. You know you have my full support. I'm doing my bit up here on social media, pushing our party's agenda and ensuring that we regain another 5 years in government. Because when you look at this government's performance, bearing in mind, like you said, the whole the pandemic, this government has performed remarkably, tremendously. This government is on point. I want to remind that just the Labour Party have been making some fundamental statements, and we should not take it lightly. One of those two statements they've made, and I take it very, very seriously. One of those were the fact that they said when they get into office, they will close down Ojo Labs.
Yes.
So I want to remind they said they're going to close down Ojo Labs, and they said they're going to shut down Sky FM.
Yeah.
This is especially the latter part.
They put me on the bread line, caller. Put me on the bread line.
Right. They said they're going to close down Ojo Labs, meaning that there are hundreds of young persons who are employed now at Ojo Labs will be out of work. So I'm putting those young people on notice. Remember that the Labour Party said if they assume office, they will be sending home. They'll be shut down Ojo Labs. To remind them quickly of is when the Labour Party was in office, remember they imposed a 15% VAT on our backs. They had to take this government to reduce VAT from 15% to 12.5%. It was in our fight to stay alive, and we kept our campaign.
Hello, are you there?
Hello?
Yeah, I could hear you. Go ahead.
Another thing, I heard the 6% in the Labour Party. They keep clamoring on this thing, trying to give the impression that this government is so wicked and we're not assisting the vulnerable people in our society. But Mr. Prime Minister, I wanted to remind St. Lucians that this government spent almost $15 million assisting vulnerable persons in our society, persons who lost their homes because of fires and stuff like that. When you look at the public assistance, we contributed more in the public assistance area than the Labour Party. So let's put that.
You're so right. When they kept on talking about that we had not had the what was it called, the fund guy that they kept on saying that we had
distress fund,
and we kept on saying that we have the distress fund. It's just called contingency, and we were able to show that in 1 year we spent as much money or gave as much money as they gave in the 5 years. Right, so we ended up giving almost 2.5 times the total amount of money that they gave in the 5 years. Yeah. But in 1 year, we gave more. One year we had $4.2 million that we gave out of the contingency fund. And we said that as the need is there, you cannot limit it to $500,000. I mean, even at $4 million Champagne, we had to turn people down.
Yes, it was a fraction of what is required.
Right. Yeah. We need to pound in the heads of St. Lucia, because that is strengthened as a campaign tool, trying to give the perception that it is so don't care.
Yeah, we're losing you, caller. We're losing you. So I give you a few more seconds. We're losing you, though. But thanks anyway.
Yeah, and then.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.
All right, beautiful. Thanks for holding, caller. Good evening.
Good night, Champagne.
Good night to you, sir.
What's up?
Everything is good. Thank you.
Mr. PM, good night.
Good night, sir.
And Mr. Guy, good night.
Good night.
Now, Mr. PM, I heard you said earlier on about local government, right? Now, under whose ministry local government falls?
Right now, it falls under Spider Mountain.
Okay. Now, I know a number of boards have been in place.
And the reason why we have it under Spider's ministry, because it also includes equity.
Oh, okay.
So we really feel that local government is the place to help with elderly care, to help now also with the vulnerable persons in our society, and social development. So all of those things really fall under his. We concentrated in one ministry with and the strengthening of local government.
Okay. Now I know. Okay, I know a number of Okay, very heavy. Okay, I know a number of villages and town councils have been reappointed. The board.
Yes.
How about Castries?
It was reappointed.
No, the other? No, from last year. The board dissolved.
Yeah.
Champagne was on the board and Champagne still there out. I ain't seen Champagne at all.
The board has been dissolved and
Since last year.
And I was
Since last year, but Champagne was on the board.
I was on the board and the board has not been reinstated. So that
right,
is,
yeah.
Is,
so what's going on?
Well, what we said is that we're going to be restructuring the Castries City Council and now creating a separate council for Castries North, Castries East, Castries Central, and Castries South. We think that it's just become now too big, and the benefits of having one council is now being outweighed by the size of the different constituencies. So it's just not stretching, and it seems that the priority is always Castries Central. So we will have a special relationship with the Castries City Council, which would now just be for Castries Central constituency. But we'll have separate councils now for the other ministries, which is in keeping with our idea of strengthening local government.
But Mr. PM, Castries City Council would service Castries North, Castries Central, East, and other areas. Castries City Council.
Yeah, but that's what he's telling you. He's telling you those constituencies are now looking to put in their own council.
Their own council?
Yes, that's
and
what
he's saying.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Which is going to work out what's best. But you want my personal opinion on Castries Constituency Council's board? Let it stay the way it is for the moment. That's my personal opinion. All right.
Okay, PM.
Okay, beautiful. Okay. So, St. Lucia, we have passed our time, so we're going to take some more calls. We have some international calls coming. Can we do some more calls? Is it okay?
Maybe 2 more calls.
Hello, good evening.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Champagne.
Good evening to you.
Good evening, our Prime Minister.
Good evening, ma'am.
So yellow, so rosy there.
She said you look
nice,
so...
Mr. Guy.
Good night.
Well, continue doing the great job. You are doing great work in St. Lucia. We are expecting you to be back for the next...
Hello?
I want to know exactly when are you all going to start the Majomel Road for us in Bunce Library.
The Majomel Road in Bunce Library. All right, Colin, thank you.
That's down on the list, and I'm hoping that as we get through the work program that we can get to that constituency. But right now there is a tremendous amount of work that's being done in all the different constituencies. We have 4 major contractors that are undertaking that work. You have Renault, you have Nationwide, and you have Fresh Start, and you have C.O. Williams. So there's a lot of work, and there was a big difficulty, and I want to let all persons know that, in getting supplies. So getting cement, the moment the cement gets here, it's going.
Oh, wow.
In fact, even today, PM, I got some calls about a shortage of stones. Quarry stones on the island.
Yeah, there's a lot of work happening.
And there's the concern that the amount that is being shipped out is causing a shortage of stones. So half-inch, 3/4 that is needed. So now that we have cement, we have a shortage of students.
Okay.
And look,
Thanks for
there's
holding, Paula.
there's some roads that may not get finished before the elections. But the good news is I think that we're going to be re-elected and the work
It's
program.
gonna continue.
That's why we say
Amen.
let's keep working.
Let's keep working. The workers. Hello, good evening. Thanks for holding. Hello, good evening. Yes, sir. Oui, oui, moi, quand on mais parlez plus fort.
Yeah. Bonjour, guys.
Good night.
Moi, ça vous ça parle anglais, so Prime Minister là, so parle anglais.
Okay. Good night, Ian.
Good night.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Black.
How are you, boss?
I'm good.
Everything good?
Yeah.
Okay. I listened to the program from the beginning of the program. I heard that you said that it's not this project, it's everything that we do. But I want to tell you and PM, in then enough, you need a lot of the program to win the election because you have an election to win in then enough. You need a lot of small projects in then enough to win.
We need what?
I want to ask PM, if they went to Parliament and change legislation to take out people from Bodley who going to get from marijuana.
I didn't hear it. I don't know if the PM heard it or the Honorable Joseph heard it. I didn't hear it.
You heard it?
I did not hear it, so I don't know if they did.
I saw your phone call, Black, when I got in here, so I'll call you afterwards. But look, our government has gone through the proper process of dialogue with everybody because this is a very important issue. And I'm very happy to report that it got through Cabinet and was sent to the Attorney General's office. And what we're waiting for from the Attorney General's is the draft legislation. And that will come back to Cabinet for approval. And once it's approved, then it will go to Parliament for debate.
What I want to say on this is the level of hypocrisy. And you can know when a Labour Party candidate is under pressure.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it means that Sean has to be under tremendous pressure in the valley. I mean, you are just in government 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You did not take a single step to address that particular matter. And all of a sudden you want to hire a taxi to go and take people.
One taxi.
I mean,
that's
the sound of a...
But you saw the same thing with the healthcare center.
That's
the
a
healthcare center
burnt
while he was in government. He had funds available to him, both from CDP and from the NLA.
Build it.
Okay? That he could have done it.
Yeah.
But he didn't do it.
Yeah.
And now he wants to hold everybody accountable. Now, this government will do it.
Yeah.
Okay? And I know the person that will do it is Farah.
That is right.
But the reality is that that's the hypocrisy that Guy is talking about.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, I mean, I never heard Sean once speak about bananas when he was in government.
No.
Black, you ever heard him speak about bananas?
No. But the other thing again, under banana, when under the John and Citizen King, PW government gave farmer incentives for free. And came in the farmers paid $10 a bag of fertilizer.
$10, huh?
Yeah, bag.
Yeah.
And people think that thing was same. And
Yeah.
because you just gave farmer fertilizer for free. And Sean and Musa never do nothing to the farmers. And I heard Musa in Parliament talking about we have never do nothing for farmers. Where was Musa and Sean?
Yeah. All right, Black. Thanks a lot, my friend. All right, have a good one. Hello, good evening.
We all have to go down and have a drink at Tom Chu Bar soon. You know?
Yeah, definitely. When, after the corona, right?
After the corona.
Yeah. Hello, good evening. Hello. Okay, so we lost this one. Hello, good evening.
Hello.
Good evening.
Yeah, you could hear me?
We could hear you.
All right. Well, I think Mr. Guy Joseph might pick up the voice, but I'll give the PM an inkling. We met at 4-2 about 3 weeks ago, PM.
Okay.
So you may have the idea who's speaking.
Yes, I do.
But Champagne,
Yes.
let me tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
I heard you speaking about Marsha, and you was living there. And,
Not I was living there. I still live there.
Well, brother, I can tell you. Well, I spent some time in Marsha a good few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But you mean to tell me, all like now, so the fellas still throwing bache, you know, in Marsha, you know. You're not aware of that?
I know everything that is happening, Colin. And for the minister, for the member for Castries East, after 25 years, to on one hand highlight 5 projects that he did after 25 years. So it means to say 1 project per term. He said he brought some water for some women that used to work at Barclays Bank. Barclays Bank has not been in St. Lucia for almost 20 years. He said he ran some lines from the bottom of Pave up to the hill. Then he said he built a court in a hole in Pave. Then he gave some, this was the one that was the most absurd. He gave some children some exercise books. I have bought exercise books for children in my area. He bought some exercise books for some children. And then he said the Entrepot Housing Project has the best road. He has nothing to do with Entrepot Housing Project.
That the roads in Independent City and Entrepot was under a UWP government. I was the Minister of Communications and Works when we did these roads.
Caller, go ahead, caller.
So what happens now is when the UWP take over Marshall, then I think that's the time the people will free up under that budget thing.
Yeah,
I don't know if the PM know anything about budget. The PM, well, that's why. But you'll explain that to him.
You know everything.
That's why I'm so. He doesn't understand. He hasn't like.
He knows everything about budget.
But he knows what.
He knows.
That is why I said in my budget debate that. And Minister Herod has highlighted exceptionally well. And you'd see the reaction of the leader of the opposition towards a parliamentarian who in 5 years has done more for his constituency
by far
than a deputy prime minister has done for 25 years.
A self-proclaimed deputy.
By far.
He said he has a cabinet conclusion. I never knew that cabinet conclusion would override a constitution.
The constitution.
Okay, there's no such thing, but that's fine. What I think is important to your point of him saying that he's a deputy prime minister, he must also be accountable for all of Kenny Anthony's sins. He cannot separate himself. And that is the problem with this party. This party has come in, they lost the last elections very badly. They still have not confessed their sins and owned up to their sins that they committed. And so there's not a fresh start. They're still trying to defend the indefensible. Right? The fact is that the Labour Party has no vision. And Philip here in himself has shown that. How you mean they're telling me you were in the constituency all those years? You don't have a clear idea when you want to take it? You cannot figure out that in order to improve the lives of the people in Castries East, you must improve the lives in Castries Central. Because the two are attached to each other. It's a suburb.
And the roads, when he came in 2011, they stopped it at the Entrepot Junction. You know, they just didn't have too much more to do. Instead of taking it down through Main Street Marshall, he stopped it at the Entrepot Junction. And that was it. The same man that is talking about the people of Marshall have love for him.
That is why I said...
Well, let's face it, there is some truth to it in that he's been re-elected for 5 terms.
That is true.
But I believe that that's an indictment against our party and not anything that's about him. And I think that this time around, with Fortuna Belrose running, the commitment that she's shown to that constituency in the last 5 years, going on the ground, reconnecting and staying with the people. And I know how competitive she is because she comes from a sports background, right? And last night in celebrating all the persons that laid the foundation in that constituency to now finally bring that constituency back home to United Workers' Party. When you can sit there and you want to say that you are a 5-star general.
5-star general.
You must first be a general.
You have to be a general before you could become a 5-star general.
You've never been a leader. I mean, I saw him in his speech talk about and making reference to people who had been there for 4 terms or 5 terms.
Yeah.
But all of them were prime ministers.
Call some names.
Okay? He's not been...
Finally, I'll tell you all something.
Yeah.
For my years, all my years, I have never, and I mean, any St. Lucian can testify to that. I have never seen a government over a period, I would even say 5 or 4, between 4.5 years, to have been able, right, to have done so much.
Yes, sir.
As what we have achieved here right now.
All the time.
Let me say this. Any blind man can see that. You don't have to explain that to people.
No.
You know, and that's logic. That's reasonable.
It's
and
a fact,
reasoning,
Colin.
good logic reasoning.
It's a
so
fact.
I want to say that let us try and keep up the good work, and we're going to see the extent of it. And I hope all the best for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot,
Thank
Colin.
you.
And now
All right,
this is our
gentlemen.
final call because the phones are still going on to the final call. You see it's ringing. Hello, good evening. Hello? I could hear you. Go ahead. Hello? All right, so I can't hear. Hello, good evening. You're the final call for tonight.
Yeah, good night, sir.
Good night, sir. Hello?
Good night.
Yeah, you hear me?
We could hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. What I have to say, I believe the SLP has lost the way in that upcoming election. The reason for that, what is troubling them, they never thought this government could have produced the goods that they are producing right now.
That's it.
Because the first 2-3 years, they keep saying the Prime Minister only traveling, nothing is happening. And look at what is happening in real time now. If it wasn't for COVID, this country would move much faster than how it's moving there right now. And I must compliment this government of St. Lucia for the way we are fighting that pandemic. It's a pandemic against the world, and we have to defeat COVID-19.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the way the government has handled that, I cannot see this government losing this general election. I'm not even talking about the projects and all what is happening. That alone could qualify this government to re-elect back in office. Because if this Labour Party had that chance that this government has, I believe a lot of us would have died in this country. And I say that, and I'm not going to withdraw my statement, because when this country, under this United Workers' Party and Prime Minister of St. Lucia, the way he handled the pandemic, and those guys were saying there is no COVID-19 in St. Lucia, especially when the Prime Minister went to Parliament to pass that piece of legislation to make this thing happen. Even the senators boycott, and then look at where the pandemic ended up climbing. Those guys never care about the safety of St. Lucian people. And this government showed us exactly how it could be done. I am calling on St. Lucian to look at the way this government handled this pandemic. And especially I have to compliment the CEO, the frontline workers, and all those people that fought and fight and to see where we are heading with this pandemic. And I must call on...
I give you 30 seconds, caller. 30 more seconds.
Nah, but I have to let St. Lucia know what is happening.
Yeah, I know, but I still give you 30 more seconds.
Even those young people where this Labour Party try to criticize the call centers and the Ojo labs, and I'm calling on all those young people to go out there and to make sure that they do not give the St. Lucia Labour Party a chance in government.
Well said.
All what I have to
Thanks a lot, caller. Beautiful. All right. Unfortunately, St. Lucia, I have a lot of calls still coming in, but I have been instructed that our phone-in period is all over. So thank you very much for all of the calls. We still do have calls coming in. Mr. Prime Minister, any last words? Because I know we'll go way past. St. Lucia, sorry about the calls. We have to end the call-in period.
I just want to say, Spider Champagne, that the work has just begun.
Yeah.
You know, and what's great about the people in our cabinet, the people in our party,
yeah,
we have a great vision, mission, and values, right? And we're remaining very focused to achieve that. And that's what people don't understand as to why is it United Workers' Party could be doing what we're doing, is because when I came in as the leader, we re-huddled and said, where do we need to take this country? And that's what we're committed to doing. Improving affordable quality health care, a globally competitive education system, security for everyone, and economic opportunities for everyone in this country. Things like COVID and stuff like that just help create a sense of urgency and help define how we will make those things happen. But we are on a vision to build a new St. Lucia for everyone, and a world-class St. Lucia.
Yeah. You want to give us a little vision of where we're going to be after COVID. And I say after COVID because we know it's going to be around for a long time. But let's assume COVID gives us a break, maybe 80-90%. Where is St. Lucia going to be after that?
COVID is not going to give us a break.
Yeah,
we have to create our opportunities.
Okay.
So the reality is that we're working very hard to get additional vaccines to St. Lucia and to give people the opportunity to be vaccinated. As you know, it's on a voluntary basis. But I'm hoping that St. Lucians would see the sense of becoming vaccinated. Because it's only when people are fully vaccinated that we're in a position to safely reopen the country. I mean, even my hesitation about calling elections, it's not about being scared.
Scared, that's not even the word.
It is about the safety of everyone.
Yeah.
We know, like Christmas, if we call elections, people are going to go out. And we've seen after all the other elections during COVID period, there's another outbreak. And this is one thing that we're extremely mindful of. That's why I'm saying to people, I can't focus on elections until I know I have the COVID thing well in hand. But constitutionally, we are required to call the elections by a certain date, which is October 12th. And we
July 12th, I mean.
No.
October 12th, after.
July 12th is when the Parliament is prorogued.
Right.
It's dissolved.
Right.
And you have 90 days
after that.
Now, we have been in that space before. Okay, so we wouldn't be the first government to call an elections past the parliamentary date that it becomes dissolved.
Right.
But that's the maximum we can go to. So hopefully we have the situation in hand before then, or I have the confirmation that we can get the vaccines.
Right.
Once we have the vaccines and we can reopen our economy, many of the different hotels can open. We know the demand is there. We know that the US is becoming vaccinated. We know the cruise ships have a protocol in place. We know the UK. Just from those two markets, we can survive.
Yeah.
And we can restart. And the continuation of the economic programs we have. I mean, I was down at Hunor Airport. Unbelievable. I've never seen so much steel. And the number of people that are there working already on the site. And that's just on the pilot driving. It's a $600 million project.
It's a big project.
Okay, we're very close to hopefully announcing the new cruise ship terminal. DSH is going to be continuing. We're working with the Canals project. We're working with the Sabasha project. And as I said, those are private sector projects, so those are driven by those persons. It's to make sure that we as a government have done everything we possibly can to cause that level of investment to take place. So we know for the next 2-3 years, construction and the expansion of arrivals of the tourism industry and the continuing development of the call centers, all of these things are going to really create massive economic opportunity. Get the banana situation right. Continue to expand on cocoa. I didn't even get to speak about cocoa, but that's another major crop that we want to develop in St. Lucia. The young people who are working in the hospitality sector who've now used this opportunity to go into a new business. So the number of persons that have applied for the Tea Village in Gros Islet. Guy has said he's going to do one in Cul-de-Sac. I'm doing one in Deresso, right? All the ministers are now looking to do the same kind of Tea Village. What is it? It's viable land with the proper infrastructure in to create small business opportunities for people. We're seeing our entertainers on the Prime Minister's playlist. There's so much talent in this country. I have to remain very optimistic about the future of St. Lucia. On our part as a government is to keep the financial house in order, so that that doesn't restrict our ability to grow. You know, today was a big day. Do you know what today was?
No.
The first day of school.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. I spoke about that all this morning.
And what did you hear? Congratulations to the minister and the ministry and the staff and the teachers and the principals and the students and the parents and everybody who sent their child to school today. But guess what? As of this weekend, there were all the naysayers about water and about this and about that. Come on, get the kids back to school. Right. You have a capable government. And that's what I'm excited about. We are on the right track. The North-South Highway. There's so many things I can come out and announce.
Oh, yeah.
But guess what? I want St. Lucians to measure us on our performance. You know what my song is.
Oh, yeah.
Action speaks louder than words.
Yeah.
Right? The action in terms of Guy showed you the projections that we made were spot on.
Yep.
We actually would have exceeded it. If you now look at what we're doing in education, what we're doing in healthcare, what we're doing in security, all around this country, the commitments that we've made, we continue to work and develop this country on an equitable basis. So I just want to say, I know we're going to have a lot more many more opportunities to interact. I want to thank the minister for sharing his evening with me, but I felt coming out of the budget and some of the issues that were brought up, I felt that they needed to be clarified. I certainly wanted solutions to understand what we've been able to achieve in very simple language, what the vision of this government is, and the optimism that we have moving forward. But we can only do it with your support.
Yeah.
And we're really hoping that everybody would see it, that we've given you 5 good years of hard work. We are not fully completed what we want to do. We never said we would have completed everything in one term. I told you it would take 2 terms.
That's right.
To complete and take this country so we build a completely new foundation for this country. We're well on our way, and that's why we say, let's keep working.
That is right. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Minister.
Thank you very much, PM, for being here on the program Inside Castries Southeast. We are very grateful to all our listeners and our viewers who stayed with us. And I know a lot of people go back and watch on social media, on Facebook, what has transpired. We've given you quite a bit of information tonight, and I really thank the PM for the work that he has done. He has the energy to continue to lead this country, and I trust that all of us in St. Lucia will give him the next term that is required to take the job to the next level. Thank you, and good night, everyone.
Some people are anticipating a Dubai of the Caribbean. That is what the vision for St. Lucia is.
Well, look, so, Dubai is a very special place.
Yes.
But I want to say to you that I think that we're not coming close to achieving our potential. I've shown that in numbers, in terms of the output per acre, right? That we're not maximizing the output of the land that we have.
Okay.
So it's the combination of land, the people, and money that it ends up producing output. And we've not found our stride yet.
Okay.
But guess what? Once you can measure something, then you can be successful. So we now know what a hotel is supposed to produce. We know what agricultural lands are supposed to produce. We know what financial services will produce. We know what the orange economy will produce. We know what the local economy, the retail sector and the wholesale sector and the manufacturing sector can produce. Yeah. And it's to maximize those things. And we're very focused on that. And this is a government that believes not in nationalism. We believe in patriotism, not nationalism. And we believe that we can gain more. We can gain more by having an open border than we can having a closed border. And some of the ridiculous arguments. I mean, when I heard Philip Pierre talk about Cabot and that their vision, which they had an opportunity to do, right? Because the land was available when they were in government.
Yeah,
I don't know why they didn't do what they did. But what he's saying is that they should have taken it, brought a consortium of people in to develop it to sell the land for real estate. Do you know how much money that would take to develop 400 acres? They couldn't even do a housing project. Did they do one housing project?
Not
one.
No.
But it's Cabot that they're going to go and do.
The same people who took the lands that was already available and gave it to foreign
companies,
JLDP,
yeah,
Bopanel, the Levity group, name them.
Yeah.
They gave every single project.
And smaller portions of land.
They could not develop it into a few housing lots. But all of a sudden they think that there's some magic.
Smaller portions of land. Eh?
Complete waste of time.
You're talking about
this,
356 acres in Carbon, as opposed to in Talbot. What's up there in Talbot? How many acres in Talbot? About 60 something acres.
No, it's not that many.
So they couldn't develop there, but they want to go and develop.
And these are the same people telling me that I must reprimand Fortuna.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, you have Sean with the minister's account.
Oh, yes, right.
Philip here has said nothing.
Nothing.
You have Ernest Hilaire with the Jafali matter and his car and everything else. He has said nothing.
You have Kenya, but with Grindberg
and Rochamel and Robert Ainsworth and all NCA cost overruns. They don't want to hold themselves accountable.
No.
But they want to come and tell you how to run it, how to run your own government. I am proud of Fortuna. Fortuna said nothing wrong. I believe that the Belrose doctrine, and hopefully the persons in Castries East will take our points as positive. We want more for Castries East, not less. And we're really hoping that the citizens of Castries East will take the time to go to Anse-Lorraine, go to Soufriere, go to Dennery South, just to those places, and see the transformation that's taken place. And we have the same ambition for Castries East, and the person to deliver that is Fortuna Belrose. That's what the Belrose doctrine is all about.
There's always the end of a road for all of us, and Philippe has come to his end.
Yeah. I mean, when you go to Castries Southeast and see the development that's taken place and the presentation that he did in the House, I mean, made everybody jealous.
Yeah.
And it's every single segment. And as he said, the infrastructure starting with the flooding. That's where it started. You can't move until you resolve that problem. And the new bridge that we're going to be doing, the straightening out of the river, all those things are going to make that land even greater secure. And look, the economic activity just from the bridge and Kentucky Fried Chicken coming in. CPJ has just opened up a new grocery store there. That road is going to go all the way, past Lucia. So the enhancement of that entire area, cul-de-sac is going to become another hotspot. And if we can now get the container port moved out of Castries into cul-de-sac as well.
That's why I said we're going straight to cul-de-sac town as opposed to village.
And, and Guy, the one point we keep on forgetting to say is that when we're doing the north-south highway, the second part of the highway is from Dennery, the tunnel through the Bardalil, and a straight road now to cul-de-sac.
Mr. Prime Minister, this is my dream, to see a tunnel go right through the Bardalil, and I'm so happy that you mentioned. You remember I've asked you that on several occasions, are we going to have a tunnel put through the Bardalil? And I remember the last time you said there's some studies being conducted at the moment.
Minister King and myself had the meeting with the guys, the Canadian government, their export development agency. We're very close to signing the deal to finalize the designs and the environmental impact assessment. It's going to cost about $8.5 million US. It'll take about 3 or 4 months, and once that's completed, we already have how we're going to finance it. So it is an absolutely necessary project.
It is,
and I think it's the one that's going to significantly transfer and transform St. Lucia.
Oh yes.
Honestly, between the airport, the water, that road, that major highway, the tunnel, but also the port in cul-de-sac, the new cruise ship terminal in Vieux-Fort. These are the things that are going to transfer. This is what will create the ability of the country doubling its GDP and possibly even tripling its GDP. And that young people now will be proud. When I see young people in Soufriere say, PM, you know how proud I am to come from Soufriere? And that's so meaningful for me because I know when I ran in 2011, that period was the dark ages for Soufriere.
You know, I'm smiling, and I'm smiling for one reason.
I suspect you don't want people to.
No. I want to say this. You know, I work down at HIA, and sometimes if I'm running a little late, once I get to the Bardalil, I have a headache because there are 5, 6 container trucks. You have a bear truck, you have gas trucks, fuel trucks, and you're stuck. I've been preaching for a tunnel from somewhere in how you call your place by the bridge by the 7 days. not Mark, before you climb the
Labby.
Labby. Run in, and that's my own personal design. Run across where Wasco has something there. Run across that area and get us somewhere.
There's a
in
much
Thomas.
shorter ridge that takes you to Mark, yes.
All right, gentlemen, I could stay all night because, but thank you very much for being in studio once again, and you're no stranger to Sky FM. St. Lucia, we want to say thank you very much for staying up with us on Sky FM with the Honorable Prime Minister Alan Shastney and the Honorable Guy Joseph. I want to say our apologies regarding our phone calls because we were trying to rush through the calls, so don't be a little upset if I didn't cut you off if I would not allow you to speak for such a long time. You know we don't do this at Sky FM, but we were trying to get as many calls as possible. So thank you once again, St. Lucia. We are going to go into the BBC. As you know, we do have a huge following of the BBC every single night. You have a great evening, and don't forget to say thank you to the great God. Good night, St. Lucia. We love you. Sky.
My mother sent us back. It was out of his breakfast to give us something. Still didn't get it.
Things were very difficult with my parents, and my mother opened a small bakery in the Castries area.
Because my father do everything he could do for me, not for himself, for me, personally. And from there, when I see my husband, I just remember my mother and my father every day, how they take it so hard to bring us up. And I seen from today there, I have two disabled children from mother. The mother asks for freedom, and they don't want that freedom, you know.
My MP said that we would have a new wellness center. Here we are. It's almost finished.
My community said we needed a new wing to our secondary school. And my MP said yes.
My sister said she needed help to find a job, so my MP created a job fair.
Our athlete said we needed better sporting facilities.
A new early childhood development center.
My neighbors said.
My sister said.
The children said.
Community said.
Roads and a new park. And my MP said.
Yes.
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 Of course.
Nous toutes, c'est yon famille en Micoud Nord. Et nous continuons pour faire progrès avec Antigel.
Hello everyone, I'm Norbert Williams, right here on Sky FM 93.1. Join me Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. for the morning edition of Keeping It Real. And on Tuesdays and Fridays, Minerva Ward joining me from Canada, right near the North Pole. Although it's cold over there, it's gonna be hot in here. Don't you forget, Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. on GVD TV and streaming live on Facebook. Don't you miss it. Crossfire, discussing the issues. Norbert Williams, Champagne, Dr. Secret, and Ring the Bell. Thursdays, 8 p.m. on Sky FM and GVD TV. Don't you miss it.
Micoud Nord family, Mamai Micoud Nord. Tune in to GVD TV 115 and Facebook Live this and every Tuesday for Let's Talk with Auntie Gail, where we will discuss what is happening in our constituency and the progress we have made so far. Anu pale epi anti-gale. Tule madi asu GVD TV channel yon sek. Mikudnof, we've got this. Let's talk. Nou tout se yon fami an Mikudnof.
I am she, I am he, I am me, I am we. Mwen se nou tout. As sure as the morning sun will blanket and then engulf the hills and the valleys, I know I will persevere. I always have and I always will. Paski ala would say che and hat is me that have that. For decades, I have awoken early. With the morning sun on my brow, I have collected my things, my tea, my cat clue and my fork. Me and my sons, my daughters, my dog and my mite. And we have walked. We have walked and we have run. We run the many miles it took to reach that place where the soil was rich. That place where we were to plant. That place where what we plant would grow. I know the smell of that earth all too well. I know the feel of that earth, for I am that earth.
Well, I'm a farmer. I've been a farmer for the longest while. I was an extension officer. The fact that I'm growing food to supply the nation, to give the people around, that alone makes me feel very good about the farming.
That fertile fortress from whose bosom we have filled our bellies. We have peddled it too. We sold it. Green, golden and grand, beautiful and majestic in the midday sun. For perhaps always see, you work the land on which you are born, and that is how you grow. And grow we did. He, she, me, Nutut.
Right behind me there, where I'm sitting there, is the press. That's where after you harvest the cassava, you grit it. You press it, you put it in a bag, so you have that process, you press it. And after it is pressed, you take it to the house where you sieve it. You have a sifter where you sieve it fine, and then you put it in the caron. That's the platin, that's what we use to make the fluorine.
Mama told me ever since when that life is neither predictable nor always rosy. So, as the green faded and the roads lay forgotten, I lifted my eyes to the east, for I still can see. I see the sea beautiful. It is purple, golden, green, fish and simos? Simos, yes. Healthy, hearty, handy, just in time too, because it will go well with my chocolate that I with my own hands learn how to make from my own cocoa. I will pursue them. I will endeavor. I will not stop because I will persevere and I will grow. Nutut, she, he, me, we. And all the while I keep singing. I sing and I dance too. Sometimes my middle even split. And while I have found fame in sports, I am also known for my service. So as I jump, I kick, I bat and I bowl, I protect and I serve and I teach. And yes, I am still running. I run, not just because I can, and God knows I can, but because it reminds me too that from Praling to the Chumasi, everything in between is me. All the work is mine. All the joy is mine. And the tears, they are mine too. I still have strength. I still have pride. And although I have changed with the seasons, my essence persists. My culture resists and fights for its life. Parce que nous toutes ces mêmes. I am he, I am she. I am me, I am we. Now this is 2021, unprecedented. A time of uncertainty, that's understood. A time of fear and of loss, but also a time for faith. I will lean on that which we have already built. He will stand, she will rise, we, nous toutes. Piti epigwa. jaune et rouge. Nous toutes ces chrétiens, we will do it. We will ride that wave, not just because we want to do it, but because we dare to do it together.